Chapter 242. In the sky, the corpses finally stopped falling, but one by one, they stood up and surrounded Ling Han and Rong Huanxian. They didn't attack, as if waiting for someone's command. However, although they were surrounded, Ling Han and Rong Huanxian didn't show any fear, because both of them had powerful life-saving methods. Ling Han had the Black Tower, and Rong Huanxian had the Three Lives Corpse Casket. All of a sudden, these corpses charged towards Ling Han and Rong Huanxian in unison. Multiple black-colored vein-like patterns appeared on their faces, causing them to instantly look strange. However, at the same time they also seemed to be slightly livelier, as if they had truly come back to life. They all stepped forward, closing in on Ling Han and Rong Huanxian. Their speed wasn't fast, but each one emitted a powerful aura. These people were indeed dead, and without being refined, they couldn't have powerful battle prowess like corpse soldiers, but the patterns on their skin completely changed everything, allowing them to have shocking battle prowess. It was as if they had become human-shaped spirit tools. Rong Huanxian, let's fight next time. Ling Han laughed, took out a swift cloud talisman and slapped it on his body, then broke into a run. There was no benefit in fighting these human-shaped spirit tools, and he and Rong Huanxian both had life-saving methods. If they couldn't kill each other, then what was the point of fighting? Staying here would be a waste of time. Moreover, these corpses should have appeared to stop them, and staying here to fight would be a fool. Boom! One of the female corpses raised a palm, and a streak of light shot out, forming multiple veined patterns that blasted toward Ling Han. A spiritual pedestal tier attack. Even if Ling Han increased his speed tenfold, it would still be impossible for him to dodge this kind of attack. However, when this streak of light was about to hit his body, his figure flashed, and he had already entered into the Black Tower. However, in the next instant he once again appeared in the Black Tower. Because his speed was too fast, it felt as if he had never disappeared. However, the attack missed. Rong Huanxian was extremely shocked, because he knew that it was impossible for him to dodge that attack. After all, it was an attack on the level of spiritual pedestal tier. If his vision was a little better, he might be able to discover that Ling Han had disappeared and reappeared, but a gushing spring tier cultivator would not be able to do so. Ling Han's calculations were too ingenious. Entering and exiting just happened to cause the attacks to miss. If he came out earlier, he would definitely be hit. If he came out later, he would have revealed an opening. How could the eyesight and judgment of a heaven-tier warrior be concealed? But he didn't have time to think too much, because many corpses had already launched attacks at him. The silver-armored corpse had just rushed up when it was smashed into pieces by an old corpse with a bang. An existence of the flower blossom tier. Rong Huanxian didn't have the slightest bit of temper, and hurriedly hid inside the copper coffin. Pung 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 pung. Countless attacks struck over, activating the Three Lives copper coffin. The vein-like patterns on the body of the coffin immediately lit up and shot out rays of black light. Even if these corpses had at least the battle prowess of the spiritual pedestal tier, they didn't have the slightest bit of resistance under the black light and were instantly disintegrated, turning into black water. In this way, basically all the corpses' attention was drawn over. Ling Han gave a long howl and sped up, instantly disappearing into the distance. Rong Huanxian could only curse from inside the copper coffin, hoping that Ling Han would be killed by one of the corpses. These corpses were very strong, but speed wasn't their forte. After Ling Han fought his way out of the encirclement, he quickly shook off his pursuers and continued running towards the black pillar of light. He had the notes left behind by Xiao Ding, continuously avoiding the dangerous areas, but after advancing for a bit more, he reached the limit that Xiao Ding had once reached. In other words, he would be able to come into contact with the source of the ominous omen here. Ling Han constantly swept his divine sense over his body, paying attention to all the minute changes, but his blood, heartbeat, and everything else didn't change. He got closer and closer to the black pillar of light, realizing that he might be about to unravel an ancient mystery, and couldn't help but feel a bit excited. After walking for a bit more, he occasionally raised his hand, but shockingly discovered that black patterns appeared on his palm and the back of his hand, the same as the corpses that fell from the sky. How was this possible? He obviously didn't feel any change, but unknowingly a change occurred, making him shocked. One had to know that he had the senses of the heaven tier, but he still fell for it unknowingly. In Xiao Ding's notes, he said that there was a mysterious power here that infected him, making him no longer himself. Then, if he was like those corpses in the sky, moving with the support of these mysterious patterns, he would be like walking corpses and indeed no longer be himself. With a thought, Ling Han had already entered into the Black Tower. In the Black Tower, he was the supreme ruler, staying far away from Lu Yutong and the other two girls, not letting them discover his arrival. Get out of here! Ling Han humphed, and a mighty power exploded from his body, making him seem as if he had become a radiant sun. Those patterns on his skin instantly shattered one by one, turning into strands of black threads. After fusing together, they were only as thick as a strand of hair. This black thread seemed to have a life of its own, constantly twisting, and even letting out shrill screeches. The level of divine sense, directly entering one's consciousness. My territory, I make the decisions. No matter what you are, you'd better behave yourself. Ling Han's right hand pressed down, and this black thread could only obediently hover in midair. Xiao's small tower appeared, shaking lightly. Do you know what this is? Ling Han asked. Demonic qi. Within it, there is a sliver of will that can control living beings, turning them into their puppets, Small Tower answered. Ling Han nodded. He'd seen it with his own eyes. Those dead people had flickering patterns on their bodies, moving as if they were walking corpses. And ultimately, this black thread was the crux of the matter. However, pure demonic qi is a pretty good kind of energy, and can be used to cleanse your body. I can grind away the will within, making it yours to use. However, the amount is too little, and the effect is limited, Small Tower continued. Really? Small Tower shook lightly. Done. That was enough. No matter what, it should at least emit some light or something and waste some time, right? Ling Han was shocked. This also showed how high the Black Tower's level was. True, in his last life it only shook lightly and his physical body died. He held that black thread, and now this thing obediently no longer resisted, and he could also feel the power within it. It was different from spiritual qi but more majestic. With a thought, he once again appeared in the outside world. A thought suddenly reverberated in his sea of consciousness. Who is it? Ling Han immediately shouted. Interesting little brat. That thought sounded again. This lord has discovered that a sliver of will has completely lost contact with this lord, and it just happens to be the one that is attached to your body. Chapter 243. A day's time quickly passed, and the winter moon sect's once every 5 years disciple recruitment ceremony finally began. Hong Long Long, the enormous mountain gate that hadn't been opened for who knew how long, slowly opened. It was too heavy, and when it opened, it was as if an earthquake had occurred. CSISI, small rocks continuously fell from the nearby mountain walls, and the soil on the ground was shaking like a carpet. Everyone felt their scalps go numb. This was really too shocking. It was only the opening of a mountain gate, and it caused such a huge commotion. A ray of light shot out from the mountain gate, indescribably dazzling, causing everyone to involuntarily close their eyes, not daring to go. Only when this ray of light gradually weakened from strong to gentle did it pass again. At this time, an old man stepped out from the mountain gate. Flowers bloomed with each step, forming incomparably resplendent patterns in midair. One after another, they didn't disappear for a long time. His physical body flew into the air, and the flower blossomed here. Everyone couldn't help but feel deep veneration. This was an existence that surpassed mortals, and in the eyes of normal people, this was actually a god. Otherwise, how could mortals fly and have a long lifespan of 200 to 300 years? This sect opens its mountain gate to recruit disciples, and officially begins, the old man said indifferently. The old man said indifferently. His voice was very gentle, but it was clearly transmitted to everyone's ears. At the same time, it suppressed the voices of the millions of people present. It was very hard to imagine that so many people had shut their mouths at the same time. It was so quiet that even a pin drop could be heard, but that was the truth. If the aura of a flower blossom tier cultivator couldn't even suppress millions of normal people, then it would be a waste to call him extraordinary and refined. You all know the rules, so this old man will explain them simply. Now, enter the mountain gate in order, receive a plaque, and then enter the mountain forest from the two sides. That is where you will battle. Disciples under the age of 30 of this sect can also participate, but they can only join on the third day. Battle and seize the plaque. This is the first step. Additionally, you all have to hurry to the northwest of Long Mountains within 3 days. There is a valley there called Fallen Goose Valley. On the third day, when the moon rises to the middle of the sky, if you do not arrive at Fallen Goose Valley, then you will be disqualified from the examination. So, if you think that you have obtained enough plaque, you can go to Fallen Goose Valley in advance. There is no need to wait until the end of the 3 days. From here, there are a total of 26 roads that lead to Fallen Goose Valley. You all decide which road to take. Since you are participating in the examination, you are responsible for your own life and death. Begin. The old man sat cross-legged in midair, but a great pressure pressed down, making everyone feel as if a rock was pressing down on their hearts. They didn't even dare to breathe too loudly. Everyone stepped forward one by one and received their plaque. Those who were alone immediately ran towards the depths of the mountain forest, while those who had formed a group waited here. Very soon a small group was formed. Ling Han's gaze swept over, and there really were a few dazzling people. A red-clothed youngster carrying a long spear that was 2 meters long on his back, exuding an iron-blooded killing aura. His cultivation of the 7th layer of the spiritual ocean tier was quite extraordinary. This should be Little Overlord's spear Yang Chong. Reaching the 7th layer of the spiritual ocean tier at the age of 24 or 25 was indeed extraordinary. One had to know that Guang Yuan was only at the 5th layer of the spiritual ocean tier at the time, and now he had just stepped into the 8th layer. However, there was a difference of 20 years in age between the two. Yang Chong immediately felt Ling Han's gaze and turned his head to look at him. A hint of disdain involuntarily appeared at the corner of his mouth, and he continued to stride forward as if he didn't take Ling Han seriously at all. And this guy needs to be beaten up properly, Ling Han said inwardly. He then looked towards a young man with a long sword at his waist. Listening to the discussions of the people nearby, that was Sword of Justice by Ming. He was also at the 7th layer of the spiritual ocean tier, and his battle prowess was even more unfathomable. It was said that he once killed a great bandit in the 9th layer of the spiritual ocean tier with one strike, and had a great reputation. There was also a red-clothed girl with a face like a peach blossom, astonishingly beautiful. There was a large red flower in her hair, setting off her jade-like pretty face in a tender and alluring manner. A black whip was tied around her waist, outlining her slender waist to the point that it could be grasped with one hand, making her already proud look even more majestic. Her raised buttocks formed a shocking arc. In the world of martial arts, the number of females was obviously less than that of males, and beautiful women were even less, not to mention that this girl was also in the spiritual ocean tier. Thus, she was like a magnet, attracting the gazes of countless people in the surroundings. The men's eyes were burning hot, and the women's eyes were red. Listening to the discussions of the surrounding people, this girl was called Si Chi Meng. But as for whether she was strong or not, no one knew because no one had seen her fight. Ling Han temporarily only came to these 3 strong people. There were really too many people here, and he couldn't come at all, so he could only go to the few people that were closer to him. The crowd was too crowded, so after an hour, Ling Han finally entered through the mountain gates and received his token. He slowly and leisurely walked into the forest, and immediately, he felt the gazes of groups of people fixed on him. However, the more calm and composed Ling Han appeared, the more these people didn't dare to act rashly. Who knew if he was pretending to be weak to eat the tiger? The Winter Moon sect didn't say that spirit tools couldn't be used, and adding on the factor of spirit tools, it would make battle prowess completely unpredictable. However, they didn't make a move, but it didn't mean that others wouldn't. Hand over the token, then get lost. Yang Chong took large strides and shouted at a small team that was guarding here. The other party was still waiting for their own people here and hadn't left. Yang Chong, the exam has just begun, why be so angry? Give me Miao Taining some face and we'll mind our own business. How about it? The leader of the small team walked out and clasped his hands at Yang Chong. You're courting death. Yang Chong snorted coldly and charged out, both fists punching out. How dare you? Miao Taining roared angrily, and hurriedly called for his lackeys to go up together. However, no matter how many dregs were added together, they were still dregs. These people didn't even have the qualifications to force Yang Chong to use his spear. Instantly, 3 people were blasted into a rain of blood by the iron fists, and Miao Taining was one of them. Instantly, the others lost all their fighting spirit in fear, turning to run. "All of you stay here." Yang Chong's figure leapt forward, punching one person each, instantly annihilating this small group. He said to a young man passing by, "You search their tokens for me." The young man paled in fright and didn't dare to resist at all. He hurriedly found the tokens from the corpses all over the ground, trembling as he brought them before Yang Chong. Yang Chong took out a bag and put away the tokens, then waved his hand and said, "Scram, if I meet you again within a day, I won't make things difficult for you." Thank you, young Master Yang." The young man was overjoyed, and hurriedly bowed his head and bowed to express his thanks. Yang Chong ignored him and looked at the other small groups, his murderous intent surging. "Run!" Those small teams immediately scattered like birds and beasts, running for their lives into the forest. Yang Chong showed a disdainful expression. His gaze swept across, revealing a strong desire to fight, and said, "You too, do you want to fight with me, Yang Chong?" Bai Ming and Si Qiming had already taken the tokens and walked into the mountain gate. Oh! Chapter 244. Ling Han's heart moved, and he said, "What sword?" 10th tier spirit tool, Demon Birth Sword. Azure Demon Emperor said. This is the sword used by the first Demon Master, fused with Demon Master's martial art intent, and is the eye of the formation here. To refine the arm of God, the formation must be opened, so the Demon Birth Sword must be taken out. Ling Han smiled faintly and said, "Although Senior's words are filled with righteousness and are even more extravagant, making my heart palpitate uncontrollably, how do I know that you aren't that Chaos Origin God in disguise? You actually want to trick me into opening the restriction and letting you out." "Ha!" Azure Demon Emperor laughed loudly, then said solemnly, "This Lord can swear on the name of my soul that this Lord is Azure Demon Emperor, absolutely not Chaos Origin God. If there's even half a word of falsehood, then let my soul fall into eternal reincarnation, unable to reincarnate for 10,000 lifetimes." Soul Oath. This was the most solemn oath. The higher the tier of the martial artist, the more they didn't dare to make such an oath carelessly, because there was heaven's will in the unseen world. Swearing with one's soul would be engraved by heaven, and breaking the oath would definitely not end well. Ling Han was a heaven-tier elite in his previous life, so he naturally knew that soul oaths definitely couldn't be faked. However, a smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. Although soul oaths couldn't be faked, Azure Demon Emperor's previous story could be faked, so his oath was naturally meaningless. Ling Han pondered whether to take this risk or not. If he could bring Demon Birth Sword and Arm of God into the Black Tower, then no matter if he had any schemes or not, he'd deal with them all obediently. However, a 10th tier spirit tool was definitely not an issue. Arm of God was divine level on par with the Black Tower. Could he refine it? Moreover, Demon Birth Sword definitely had a spirit, and the Arm of God even had Chaos Origin God's remnant consciousness, needing the other party's approval to be put into the Black Tower. He didn't have the initiative. Thus, Ling Han didn't dare to make a rash decision. "Youngster, could it be that you don't believe this Lord?" Azure Demon Emperor snorted, revealing a displeased expression. "Fine, this Lord will summon the tool spirit of the Demon Birth Sword, and you can ask it yourself." In just a short while he saw a streak of light flying over from afar. Really was a sword. There were many vein-like patterns on the body of the sword, forming characters one after another. With just a glance it made Ling Han's head feel like it was boiling, churning incomparably, and extremely uncomfortable. It was definitely beyond the 9th rank. Otherwise, Ling Han wouldn't have been unable to withstand such a martial art willpower with just a glance. "It is indeed an artifact spirit." A voice came from Small Tower. It was connected to Ling Han's consciousness, so they could communicate at any time without worrying about anyone knowing. "I am the Demon Birth Sword." The sword shook slightly and transmitted a divine sense. It was indeed a rank 10 spiritual weapon. Ling Han couldn't help but feel a surge of joy. He planned to walk the path of the sword, so he naturally desired to possess a high-level spiritual weapon. If he could obtain the Demon Birth Sword, then he wouldn't have to consider the problem of a weapon before breaking through to the immortal level. "Youngster, do you still have any doubts about this Lord?" Azura Demon Emperor's voice once again sounded in Ling Han's consciousness. He could only use divine sense to communicate with Ling Han. Ling Han revealed a smile and said to Small Tower in his mind, "Can you help me subdue this spirit's main body?" Small Tower was silent for a while as if thinking and said, "If I use my full battle prowess, I can destroy all existences in this realm. Subduing a rank 10 spiritual weapon is naturally easy. But in the depths of my memories, there's a strong voice telling me that I definitely can't expose myself. 10,000 years ago, in order to become one with you, I used up the little bit of source power that I recovered, and in order for you to take over my body and be reborn, I used up all the source power that I had just condensed. If I attack again now without source power to conceal the secrets of heaven, my existence will definitely be discovered by many powerful existences. At that time you'll die and I'll be stripped away." Ling Han didn't hear the difference between source power and origin power. He sighed and said, "After talking for so long, you definitely can't attack. There's 10,000 years time for me to recover source power, and I can attack once," Small Tower said. Ling Han's expression was strange. In 10,000 years' time, he would either become a god or become a skeleton. He definitely wouldn't be able to wait for Small Tower to show its might. "However, if you can bring the spirit's main body into my body, then I can attack without hesitation and suppress it," Small Tower added. In the end, he still had to bring the demon birth sword into the Black Tower. Ling Han thought for a while and said, "How much do you think that Azura Demon Emperor's words are true? I don't understand people's hearts, so I can't judge whether it's true or false." Small Tower shook lightly as if shaking its head. "But based on the divine sense he left on your body, as long as he enters the tower, I can suppress him at will." He had to enter the tower again. Ling Han sighed. This was the most difficult part. It was like he obviously had a good set of cards but didn't have the chance to use them. No matter how good the cards were, they could only rot in his hands, which made him very depressed. Ling Han was slightly startled and looked behind him. He heard a rumbling sound, and in the time of a few breaths, he saw 3 coffins slide over as if they had grown legs. Ronghuan Xian, he really was like a ghost that wouldn't go away. Peng Ronghuan Xian jumped out of the copper coffin. His gaze swept over Ling Han, and he couldn't help but reveal an expression of surprise as he said, "You actually didn't get infected by demonic qi and become a walking corpse like those dregs. Even you didn't what more me?" Ling Han said indifferently. "You mean you're stronger than me?" Ronghuan Xian said with narrowed eyes, revealing a dangerous aura. "Isn't it obvious?" Ling Han said with a smile. Perhaps this guy would be his opponent for a long time, so he naturally didn't mind mocking him a bit. Ronghuan Xian was enraged and was about to attack, but he suddenly paused, revealing an appearance of listening attentively. Ling Han immediately guessed that Azura Demon Emperor told Ronghuan Xian about the Arm of God and Demon Birth Sword again. "Ha ha ha." Ronghuan Xian quickly laughed loudly. Never would have thought that there was such a big secret hidden here. My silver-armored corpse's death wasn't in vain." Ling Han knew that he was moved, and said, "Ronghuan Xian, you have to think clearly, don't throw yourself in as well." Ronghuan Xian smiled proudly. He had 3 lives corpse caskets, which was a 10th-tier spirit tool, so he definitely wouldn't fear Demon Birth Sword. Even if Chaos Origin God was boundlessly powerful, now that it was cut into 9 pieces, how much power was left? Moreover, he wasn't an idiot. Couldn't he think clearly before acting? Xiao Demon Birth Sword's tool spirit already flew up. Ronghuan Xian immediately leapt into the copper coffin and followed, his speed extremely fast. Ling Han shook his head and followed behind. Although he wasn't a chivalrous man who cared for the world, he also didn't wish for the world to be in chaos, so he naturally had to guard against Ronghuan Xian doing crazy things. Ronghuan Xian was a disciple of the Thousand Corpse sect, so he couldn't be considered human anymore. Phone reading was more refreshing. Chapter 245. Actually, Ling Han still had many questions that he didn't ask Azura Demon Emperor, such as why were there so many corpses in the sky? Since the Devil Sky Mystery Realm would open at regular intervals, why did it only find him in Ronghuan Xian now? Could it be that no one had run past the Lightning River before? Ling Han thought of the demonic qi. Could it be that those who couldn't resist the demonic qi weren't qualified to come into contact with Azura Demon Emperor? He lagged far behind. It was fine as long as he didn't lose sight of them. They walked for a long time before the demon birthsword finally stopped. A giant altar appeared in front of them. It was circular with a high protrusion in the middle, and platforms on all sides. One could see characters drawn on the ground, profound and incomprehensible. In any case, Ling Han didn't understand. He set his gaze on the protruding part in the middle of the altar. On it was a sword that looked exactly the same as the one that claimed to be the spirit of the demon birthsword. Come, that was indeed the spirit of this sword. This sword's blade was entwined with wisps of black qi, as if it had transformed into a demonic dragon, continuously twisting and spreading. Xiao in the sky, that spirit suddenly entered the treasured sword, no longer appearing. Young man, there's only one good fortune. Whoever obtains the demon birth sword, this lord will bestow the good fortune to that person. Azure Demon Emperor's voice sounded again. Rong Huanxian laughed, jumped out of the bronze coffin and said, "Of course it's mine." But in that instant his body was suddenly covered with black demonic patterns, causing him to shout in shock and immediately jump back into the bronze coffin. Ling Han's pupils involuntarily tightened. The demonic qi here was too strong. Rong Huanxian only appeared for a moment and was entwined by the demonic qi. If he didn't have the 3 lives corpse casket, that one would probably be enough to make him lose his mind and become a puppet controlled by the demonic qi. Strange, then why was he fine? Could it be that he refined that demonic qi, causing the demonic qi here to fear him? The 3 lives corpse casket trembled slightly, and the veined patterns on its surface glowed, forming ancient runes one after another. Soon after, wisps of black gas came out of the casket, but they were very faint. Obviously, this corpse coffin was helping Rong Huanxian expel the demonic qi, but this was far from comparable to the Black Tower. Ling Han only needed a thought to expel the demonic qi, and Small Tower easily subdued the demonic qi. After at least an hour, no more black qi was released from the copper coffin. Obviously, the demonic qi on Rong Huanxian's body had been completely expelled. "Ling Han, why are you completely fine?" Rong Huanxian called out from within the copper coffin, obviously not daring to show himself. Ling Han shrugged and said, "Why should I tell you?" Rong Huanxian also knew he spoke nonsense, but he was curious. Even he relied on the 3 lives corpse casket to avoid being corroded by the demonic qi, so what did Ling Han rely on? Ling Han circled around the altar and said, "That's right, this is the core of a formation, and the demon birth sword is the eye of the formation. Taking away the demon birth sword, this formation wouldn't be completely ineffective, but at least half of it would be crippled. Youngster, this lord has underestimated you. Actually having such knowledge." Azure Demon Emperor's voice sounded again. "Taking away this sword, not only can you obtain a 10th tier spirit tool, you can even obtain the arm of a god." Ling Han didn't speak. After a while he revealed a smile and said, "There's no free gift in this world. Many misfortunes start from greed." "I don't believe you." "Why?" Azure Demon Emperor asked, puzzled. "A demon that uses demonic qi to control others at will. Making a deal with him, isn't it like being sold and still having to pay for it?" Ling Han said indifferently. He suppressed his own greed. "Youngster, you misunderstand. This lord cultivates demonic arts, and after merging with the formation, demonic qi naturally filled this world. Moreover, this lord has already lost his body, so it's impossible to control demonic qi." Azure Demon Emperor explained. Ling Han shrugged and said, "I think this is quite good. Why not let that chaos origin god continue to be suppressed, and after a few hundred years, I'll almost reach the shattering void tier. At that time, I'll come back to reinforce the formation, and guarantee that Dog's Hit God will never be able to rise again." Azure Demon Emperor was instantly speechless. After a while he said, "Such a great opportunity, you're actually going to miss it. 10th tier spirit tool, arm of God, they were indeed good things, but Ling Han kept feeling that things were going too smoothly, so smoothly that it was like a trap, causing him to be extremely vigilant. "No, this opportunity is mine." Hong, a copper coffin flew over, and Rong Huanxian's roar came from within. "My opportunity, no one can take it away." He was forced into a desperate situation to obtain the 1,000 corpse sex inheritance, obtaining the strength to rise again, and annihilating his enemies. Moreover, his future was bright, and he had hopes of becoming one of the few elites in the world. Thus, he greatly believed in opportunity, and even more so in his own luck. This 10th tier spirit tool, this arm of God, was bestowed to him by the heavens, and only belonged to him, and definitely couldn't be taken away by others. Long under his control, the copper coffin directly slid towards the altar. Wung, this altar was immediately activated. This was the core of the entire formation, and also the most powerful part. One after another, vein-like patterns lit up, and those characters seemed to suddenly come alive, appearing one after another. A shocking scene appeared. These characters actually turned into white human figures, but they had no noses, eyes, or mouths, and their entire bodies were densely covered in glowing characters. These talisman men all attacked, slapping towards the copper coffin. Ling Han immediately revealed a look of astonishment. He could be 100% sure that these talisman men's power was at most in the heaven tier. How was this possible? With a 10th tier spirit tool as the eye of the formation, the talisman men formed by the formation should have the power of the shattering void tier. Or else they might as well use 10 9th tier spirit tools to replace it. Could it be that a 10th tier spirit tool couldn't compare to 10 9th tier spirit tools? Pong, these attacks struck the copper coffin, stimulating the vein-like patterns on the coffin to activate, releasing black light. Not only did it block the talisman men's attacks, it even counterattacked, appearing extremely domineering. This copper coffin was definitely a 10th grade treasure. As long as the talisman man was illuminated by the black light, the runes would immediately dim. However, it was not like before, where the black light would spread and expand the wounds. Obviously, against a 9th tier existence, although the copper coffin had the upper hand, it wasn't so strong that it was nature-defying. However, although the copper coffin was restricted, it still continued to move forward, albeit at a much slower speed. Ling Han frowned deeply. If Ronghuan Xian really took the demon birth sword, who knew what would happen? He snorted lightly, opened his left hand, and was about to shoot out the blood-sucking origin gold to forcibly pull the copper coffin back. Young man, it's fine if you don't want the fated chance, but you still want to stop others from obtaining it. You've gone too far. Azura Demon Emperor's voice sounded, and a large black demonic pattern instantly appeared on Ling Han's hand, causing his movements to involuntarily stop. Chapter 246. Ling Han felt as if his hand was out of control, so he naturally couldn't strike out the blood-sucking origin gold. The demonic pattern was rapidly expanding, spreading towards his head. At the same time, an indescribable evil was growing inside his body, as if it wanted to swallow him alive. Become this lord's slave. You seem to be hiding some secret, and this lord is very interested to know. Azura Demon Emperor's voice sounded again. Ling Han snorted, but he couldn't care about Ronghuan Xian right now. If the demonic pattern really spread to his head, his consciousness would definitely be erased by the demonic qi, and from then on, he would become a walking corpse controlled by Azura Demon Emperor. His figure flashed, and he entered the Black Tower. Get out! He shouted loudly. A mysterious power surged inside his body, and waves of black qi were instantly expelled from his body, making him feel refreshed. Small tower, the space shook, and small tower appeared out of thin air. It only trembled slightly, and all the black qi immediately condensed into a ball. In an instant, the consciousness within was erased, and it became a ball of pure demonic qi. Ling Han's figure flashed again, and he appeared in the outside world. What, you actually expelled the demonic qi so quickly, and refined this lord's consciousness? Azura Demon Emperor exclaimed. Tens of thousands of years of planning, how can it be ruined in the hands of a child? Today, even if I have to pay a great price, this lord will achieve his goal. Black qi once again appeared on Ling Han's body, and like spirit snakes, they scrambled to drill into his body. Fuck. Ling Han cursed and entered the Black Tower at the first instant. Small tower moved, sweeping away all the demonic qi on his body and refining it. Ling Han made a comparison in his mind. The two waves of demonic qi before were somewhat different. The wave of demonic qi before contained the consciousness of Azura Demon Emperor, wanting to control and manipulate him. But the large ball of demonic qi behind only confused his mind, and there was no longer the consciousness of Azura Demon Emperor within it. It was very simple. He was afraid that his consciousness would be erased again. There was a limit to a person's divine soul. If a part of it was obliterated, it would forever be lost. This was something that could never be made up for. Thus, although the Azura Demon Emperor wanted to stop him from stopping Ronghuan Xian, it was absolutely impossible for him to send a large amount of consciousness for him to destroy. This was equivalent to suicide. Thus, the Azura Demon Emperor had also given up on the idea of controlling him. He only wanted to make him lose his mind and become a mindless idiot under the influence of the demonic qi. Of course, expending demonic qi like this would definitely cause the Azura Demon Emperor to suffer a great blow to his vitality, which was why he said, "No matter how great the price, I will still achieve my goal." But it could also be imagined how big the Azura Demon Emperor's scheme was, for him to stop Ling Han at all costs. Ling Han appeared once again. This time it took him less than half a breath of time to enter and exit. He swept a glance over and saw that the copper coffin was getting closer and closer to the demon birth sword. But this 10th tier spirit tool didn't show any signs of showing its might. Otherwise, a 10th tier spirit tool against a 10th tier spirit tool, the 3 lives corpse casket definitely wouldn't have an advantage. Thinking of how the Azura Demon Emperor and the demon birth sword's spirit echoed each other, it was obvious that the demon birth sword had already been subdued by the Azura Demon Emperor. Now that Ronghuan Xian was running errands for the Azura Demon Emperor, the demon birth sword naturally wouldn't show its might. On the contrary, if he entered the altar now, he would definitely suffer a head-on attack from the demon birth sword, and there would be no other way but to hide in the Black Tower. The Azura Demon Emperor only thought that his speed of refining demonic qi was fast, and thought that the treasures on him were far stronger than the 3 lives corpse casket. In reality, the Black Tower couldn't be taken out at all. Even if he let Ling Han advance, Ling Han wouldn't be able to stop Ronghuan Xian as long as the demon birth sword attacked. But how could the Azura Demon Emperor know? Seeing Ling Han come out, he immediately used a large amount of demonic qi to corrode him, wasting it. One in and one out, the two seemed to be playing hide and seek. The demonic qi Ling Han obtained became more and more, causing him to be overjoyed. After the evil and chaos in the demonic qi was refined by Small Tower, it was a high-level energy and a great tonic that could improve his physique and cultivation. A good person. Ling Han really wanted to give a medal to the Azura Demon Emperor. There weren't many good people like him these days. He sighed ruefully in his heart, yet he entered and exited even more frequently to fish for more benefits. The Azura Demon Emperor was practically going crazy, but he didn't know that it was practically impossible for Ling Han to stop Ronghuan Xian. He was still sparing no effort in using demonic qi to corrode Ling Han, and this consumption was so great that he felt he couldn't bear it. Fortunately, the copper coffin finally arrived in front of the demon birth sword. He couldn't help but stop circulating the demonic qi. Although it was only a divine sense, it emitted incomparable anticipation. If he could manifest it now, he would definitely be extremely excited and expectant. Ronghuan Xian pushed open the coffin lid and reached out to grab the demon birth sword. Ling Han just came out and was wondering why the demonic qi suddenly stopped attacking him. He wasn't used to it, and when he turned his head he saw this scene. Even if he could make a move now, it was already too late, so he just sat on the sidelines and watched what would happen next. Ronghuan Xian's hand grabbed the demon birth sword, and a ray of light instantly burst forth, extremely resplendent. The copper coffin also emitted a blinding light, forming black characters that welcomed that ball of light. Ling Han felt as if his eyes were blinded, unable to see anything. However, after these 2 balls of light burst forth for a while, they were extinguished one after another. Ronghuan Xian let out a blood-curdling scream as his right arm was severed at the shoulder, spurting fresh blood. Xiao, his severed arm, was still holding onto the demon birth sword, and coincidentally, it actually smashed towards Ling Han's direction. Hong long long, the altar shook violently. Cracks actually appeared on that pillar of light that soared into the sky, and countless black dots smashed down from the sky. Hong, this pillar of light began to shatter from the top, spreading all the way downwards, and in the time of a breath it completely shattered. Pa 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 pa, corpses fell on the ground, but this time they didn't smash any holes, nor did they climb back up. Instead, they were all smashed into smithereens, turning into balls of blood. With a hong, the altar also split open from the middle, revealing an unfathomably deep fissure. Immediately after, a cloud of black smoke suddenly emerged from below, forming a human-shaped thing above the altar. Ling Han's eyes and hands were quick, and he had already grabbed Rong Huanxian's severed arm, naturally grabbing the demon birth sword as well. "Give me back my arm, give me back my sword." Rong Huanxian saw this and actually stopped crying out in pain, shouting angrily at Ling Han. Xiao, that human-shaped black smoke in the sky suddenly crashed towards Ling Han. This was a plot after all. A thought flashed through Ling Han's mind, but who asked Rong Huanxian, this idiot, to insist on pulling out the sword? Now that the demon suppressed in the mystery realm was released, he was at his wits' end. His figure flashed and he entered the black tower. The mass of black smoke missed its target and immediately turned around to stare at Rong Huanxian. Fuck. Rong Huanxian was shocked. Chapter 247. Who are you people? Zhao Huan immediately shouted. Who are we? The 7 people laughed and raised their hands to show to the crowd. You guys are blind, didn't you want to enter our sect? Don't you even recognize our sect's symbol? You guys are disciples of the Winter Moon sect? Everyone came to a sudden realization. Didn't you guys say that you guys can only join the exam on the 3rd day? Why have you appeared now? Qian Wuyong asked. You guys are quite nosy, a disciple of the Winter Moon sect said indifferently. Humph, that yellow dragon fruit is our sect's item. We're in charge of guarding it. You guys immediately hand it over, and we won't argue with you guys. Bullshit. Bailey Tungyun was young and impetuous, immediately jumping up. That's obviously a beast guarding it, what does it have to do with you guys? I know you guys must have just arrived, so you guys deliberately waited for us to get the spirit medicine before jumping out to pick the peaches. That disciple of the Winter Moon sect started clapping, and said with a smile, haha, you're absolutely right, but so what if you guys know? I, Zhanming, am at the first layer of the spiritual ocean tier, and even if you guys work together, you're still not my match. Senior brother Zhan, the yellow dragon fruit is of great importance. Let's kill them all to prevent the news from leaking, another disciple on the side suggested. Zhan Yuan thought for a moment and said, that's fine, or else it wouldn't be good if people found out that we participated in the exam today. Kill them all. Zhao Huan immediately drew her sword and said, Wu Wu Ziyan Feng and you guys fight that spiritual ocean tier with me. The others are only at the gushing spring tier, so it's not like we don't have any hope of winning. Okay. Everyone drew their weapons one after another. The yellow dragon fruit was too important, and none of them wanted to give it up. Zhan Yuan sneered and said, truly a bunch of trash that overestimates their own capabilities. The battle immediately began, and blood once again flew like a whirlwind. Ling Han's figure dashed swiftly, and behind him, the beast was also getting closer and closer. Beasts didn't know any movement techniques, but some agility-type beasts were born with astonishing speed, comparable to martial artists of the same tier using top-notch movement techniques. It was as if some kind of martial arts actually flowed in their blood, and they didn't need to use it at all, and would naturally use it according to instinct. Just like before, this beast could shoot lightning from its eyes. This would be considered a martial arts technique no matter what if it was used by martial artists, but the beast could casually use it. Thus, beasts would never be afraid when encountering martial artists of the same tier, and king-tier beasts could even sweep them away, being extremely terrifying. Even if Ling Han used the black-grade high-level shadow wind movement, the nine-eyed beast wolf still caught up to him step by step. Suddenly, an arc of lightning shot out from its eyes, swiftly shooting towards Ling Han. How fast was lightning? Ling Han only had time to pull back his sword to parry, and with a Z, he felt his right hand go numb. The entire iron sword had already turned into a pool of molten iron, and the webbing between his thumb and forefinger was ruptured, with blood gushing out. Fuck, he'd now cultivated body of rock cliff, and its defense was astonishing, yet he was injured from a single attack. It was a king-tier beast, and its cultivation was a lot higher than his. Wasn't it a bit presumptuous for him to want to kill it? However, precisely because this beast was a king-tier beast, it could be used as a stepping stone to consolidate his final cornerstone and charge into the spiritual ocean tier. No matter what, I have to try. Anyway, I have the Black Tower. If I can't beat him, I'll just hide. However, as long as there was a sliver of chance, even if he'd be riddled with scars, he definitely wouldn't give up. He definitely wouldn't lose his adventurous spirit just because he had the Black Tower. On the contrary, it would only make him more daring. The nine-eyed beast wolf shot another arc of lightning over. Ling Han didn't bother to waste his sword, and directly threw out a punch. The indestructible heaven scroll circulated, and a faint golden light overflowed from his hand. Hong, the lightning struck, and Ling Han groaned as his right fist suffered another heavy injury. Fuck, although I'm at the 9th layer of the gushing spring tier, I've already merged 9 spring eyes. Moreover, it's the fusion of the 5 elements origin nuclei. This kind of power is definitely comparable to the 4th layer of the spiritual ocean tier, or even the 5th layer. However, this large dog is only at the 5th layer of the spiritual ocean tier, so how can its attack be so fierce? If I didn't cultivate the indestructible heaven scroll, I'm afraid my entire arm would have exploded in one hit. Ling Han said inwardly as he circulated the indestructible heaven scroll, and his right hand quickly recovered to its original state. The indestructible heaven scroll, at least in the rock cliff tier, didn't have an obvious increase in defense, and its power lay in recovery. However, it was different when one stepped into the diamond tier. At that time, the physique would be indestructible, and the physical body would be practically immortal. The nine-eyed beast wolf released electricity again. Are you done yet? Ling Han no longer fled and instead turned around. This place was quiet enough, and he'd changed his appearance now, so it didn't matter even if someone discovered some of his little secrets. The demon birth sword was unleashed, meeting the electric arc head-on. Pa, the electric arc hit, and a field of light exploded, forming a dazzling white ball that was bright enough to blind one's eyes. Ling Han revealed a hint of a smile. A level 10 spirit tool was awesome as expected. Even if it hadn't awakened, its own attribute alone was enough to disperse the electric arc. True, if even this allowed the electric arc to invade the body, then the demon birth sword would be too useless. Wang Wang on the sword's body, 2 vein-like patterns shone faintly. This spirit tool had already awakened to a certain extent. The nine-eyed beast wolf immediately revealed a vigilant expression. It was a king among beasts, and had a shocking sensitivity towards dangerous auras. However, it soon felt at ease. Although the aura emitted by the demon birth sword was dangerous, it wasn't strong, making it fearless. This beast wolf immediately pounced over and brandished its right paw. Over a dozen vein-like patterns shone at the same time on its paw. Wang Wang Wang, martial intent vibrated, forming a terrifying pressure. However, this was ineffective against Ling Han. A sliver of heaven-tier divine sense was enough to make him immune to most of the pressure. He raised his sword, and the 4 seasons sword technique was unleashed, meeting the beast wolf head-on. Spring, summer, autumn, and winter, the 4 types of concepts circulated simultaneously, and in an instant the 4 seasons changed, making one feel the passage of time and the vicissitudes of time. Pooh! The beast wolf's paw swatted down, and the sword light instantly shattered. Ling Han was directly sent flying by the paw, and the clothes on his left shoulder were torn open, leaving behind a deep wound. Blood instantly gushed out, and the beast wolf's paw was also cut open, with fresh blood spilling everywhere. The demon birth sword was, after all, a 10th tier spirit tool. Even if it hadn't awakened, its sharpness wouldn't change in the slightest. My beast wolf's blood! Ling Han cried out in distress. A royal beast's entire body was a treasure, especially its blood and bone marrow. Those were all great supplements, much stronger than 100-year-old ginseng. The nine-eyed beast wolf's gaze involuntarily revealed a sinister look. As strong as it was in the spiritual ocean tier, it had long since developed intelligence, but it still maintained the bloodthirst and violence of a beast. It could understand Ling Han's words, and this made it incomparably furious. It actually felt heartache for it. Didn't it already consider itself to be his dish? Phone reading was more refreshing. Chapter 248. Immortal level energy was a great supplement, only slightly inferior to godly medicine. Previously, Ling Han ate the root of the godly medicine and improved his physique greatly, even almost forming the body of rock cliff, but his cultivation didn't improve at all. That was because real treasures would only improve one's foundation. As the saying goes, good steel should be used on the blade's edge, so why would it be wasted on improving cultivation? With a good foundation, cultivation wouldn't improve quickly. However, this energy also improved his cultivation very quickly, which meant that a portion of the energy was actually wasted. Of course, Ling Han needed to improve his cultivation, so he naturally wouldn't mind. Moreover, this demonic qi was given to him for free, so how could he be picky? Shua, a figure dashed over in front of him. Her 4 limbs were on the ground, but her movements were shockingly smooth, and in an instant she arrived in front of him. Who else could it be but Hu Niu? Ling Han bad, Niu also wants to eat. The little girl pounced over, opened her mouth and inhaled, and a few wisps of demonic qi entered her mouth. Ling Han wanted to stop her, but thinking that Hu Niu even digested a root of the godly medicine, this bit of demonic qi wouldn't be a problem, so he wouldn't be stuffed to death. Thus he allowed the little girl to share. Fortunately, Hu Niu had a sense of propriety, and only inhaled a few mouthfuls before sitting to the side and starting to refine the energy. Strange fire stings slept. Hu Niu meditated, and Ling Han meditated. Only small tower leisurely vibrated lightly. Wang Ling Han's dantian was undergoing a drastic change. If his divine sense took human form as a comparison, then the spring's mouth was equivalent to a large lake with a circumference of about a mile, but now it expanded more than 5 times, reaching a limit. Ling Han was experienced, and immediately realized that he reached the peak of the first layer of the gushing spring tier. Normally, he should liquefy the second origin nucleus into a spring and repeat the previous process, but where would he find a second origin nucleus for him to liquefy? Could it be that he could only cultivate to the first layer of the gushing spring tier? Of course not. He immediately discovered that this limit was not very stable. He only needed to attack it slightly to break it. Comprehension of the realm was not a problem, so he only needed energy. But now that the demonic qi had entered his body, the energy filled him to the point that he doubled in size, so there was no problem. Break. The terrifying energy only surged slightly, and the mouth of the spring immediately broke through its original limit, expanding to twice its original size in an instant. Only then did it slow down, but it was still extremely fast because the demonic energy was far from exhausted. Second layer of the gushing spring tier. Ling Han knew that he had broken through, but there was still only one spring in his dantian. No matter where it was, it would be considered as the first layer of the gushing spring tier. He sighed. It wasn't that he wanted to act cool, but he was forced to. As this thought flashed through his mind, Ling Han smiled. When he reached the peak of the first level, he did a comparison. His spring eye was 100 times bigger than when he was in the same state in his previous life. This was because his spring eye was formed from the 5 elemental nuclei, and it was a fusion of 9 nuclei. It would be strange if it wasn't so exaggerated. However, to expand the spring eye to its limit, it would take 100 times more energy, which meant 100 times more cultivation time. If he didn't obtain the demonic qi this time, he would need at least 1 or 2 months to complete it. He estimated that the remaining demonic qi should be able to help him break through another 2 or 3 small tiers. Rush. Time passed quietly. Under the nourishment of the demonic qi, the spring eye expanded to its limit again. His body shook, and the door to the third layer of the gushing spring tier opened to him. This speed was shockingly fast. Third layer, middle stage, late stage, peak. He broke through again. Until the middle stage of the 5th layer of the gushing spring tier, the demonic qi was finally exhausted. Ling Han smiled slightly and opened his eyes. He was now in an extremely strange state. He had the cultivation of the 5th layer of the gushing spring tier, but he was only at the 1st layer of the gushing spring tier. His true power surpassed the 9th layer of the gushing spring tier, and his battle prowess could easily reach 15 stars even without using trump cards. To outsiders, that was a guy at the 1st layer of the gushing spring tier having battle prowess over 15 stars. How nature-defying was that? Moreover, his physique successfully broke through to body of rock cliff. Not only did his defense greatly increase, he could also refine 2 more drops of indestructible true fluid. Ling Han raised his right hand and shook it lightly. Rays of black light surged out and formed a net. They also looked like vein-like patterns forming some kind of character. However, these black lines could only attach to his palm, and couldn't be shot out. He faintly had a feeling that these black lines were extremely terrifying, because he definitely didn't want to be touched by them. This was what remained after refining the demonic qi. Small tower, what is this? Ling Han asked. The power of regulation. Small Tower said without hesitation. Ling Han was startled. Because Small Tower lost its memories, he only asked casually and didn't hold much hope. He didn't think that Small Tower would really answer him, which surprised him. What is the power of regulation? He asked again. Small Tower shook slightly as if thinking. After a while it said, I'm not sure, but it's very powerful. He didn't think that a tool spirit could say such irresponsible words. Yeah. Hunyo suddenly jumped up, and with a pong, she leaped over 30 meters high. When she landed, the little girl couldn't help but jump happily and said, Nyo broke through. Ling Han's gaze swept over and saw that Hunyo impressively reached the peak of the 9th layer of poly, and only needed a little bit more to reach the gushing spring tier. This little girl's cultivation speed, as far as Ling Han knew, was definitely unprecedented. Even if he was the reincarnation of Heaven tier and possessed an immortal level spirit base, he would only be eclipsed in front of Hunyo. Nyo wants to fight Tin. Hunyo laughed loudly. Ling Han laughed mischievously and grabbed with his right hand. The demon birth sword already appeared in his hand, immediately showing a strong intention to struggle. However, inside the Black Tower it was useless even if it was a 10th tier spirit tool, as it was completely restrained by the Black Tower. With a thought, the power of the Black Tower immediately circulated and began to cleanse the demonic chi in the demon birth sword. However, he immediately discovered that the spirit of the demon birth sword had already completely mixed with the demonic chi, and could no longer be separated. If he refined the demonic chi, then the spirit would die as well. He only hesitated slightly and decided to continue because what was the point of a 10th tier spirit tool that couldn't be used by him? The existence of the spirit would only have the opposite effect, and once it left the Black Tower, it would kill him without hesitation. Since that was the case, then it was obviously better to erase the spirit and slowly nurture a new one in the future. Hong, the mighty power of the Black Tower swept over, and in that instant, the spirit of the demon birth sword and the demonic chi were annihilated together, leaving nothing behind. Ling Han picked up the treasured sword and tried to activate the martial art intent on the sword. If the spirit didn't die, then as long as it was willing to help, the 10th tier spirit tool could explode with the power of the shattering void tier, which would be enough for Ling Han to run amok on this continent. But now that the spirit was dead, Ling Han needed to use his own power to activate the martial art intent on the sword and activate the spirit tool's power. He held back for a long time and saw a pattern on the sword barely light up. Phone reading was more refreshing. Chapter 249. Too weak. His current strength was truly too weak. Being able to barely arouse a sliver of martial art intent was because he possessed a sliver of heaven-tier divine sense. Ling Han nodded. It was alright, at least this sword was genuine 10th tier material, and although it only aroused a sliver of martial art intent, shattering void tier elites were so powerful that even a sliver of martial art intent was extremely awesome. Moreover, the stronger he was, the more he could arouse the demon birth sword's power, and sooner or later, this 10th tier spirit tool would regain its glory. The problem was, his current strength was too weak. If it was really revealed that he possessed a 10th tier spirit tool, then how many covetous gazes would it attract? He secretly decided not to use the demon birth sword unless it was a critical moment. Now it was time to meet that demon emperor. Ling Han looked outside through the Black Tower and saw that Rong Huanxian was still searching for him, looking determined to find him. His figure flashed and he appeared in the outside world. Huh. Seeing Ling Han appear without a sound, Rong Huanxian instantly revealed a shocked expression. If Ling Han could appear beside him like this, then wouldn't he be able to easily succeed if he launched a sneak attack? Ling Han smiled faintly and said, Now should I call you Rong Huanxian, or Azura Demon Emperor? Rong Huanxian's soul should have been erased, and now Azura Demon Emperor's soul occupied this body. Youngster, this lord originally wanted to occupy your body, but didn't expect you to run so fast. Rong Huanxian smiled. Call this lord whatever you want. When this lord reigns over the world, I'll naturally recover the title of Azura Demon Emperor. Ling Han's right hand shook, and the demon birth sword appeared in his hand. He brandished the sword and said, If you die here, there'll be no future. Ha ha. Rong Huanxian laughed loudly, then shook his head. Perhaps you can destroy this lord's body, but it doesn't matter. This lord can occupy another one. If this lord was so easy to destroy, how could I have been divided into 9 parts and suppressed in various mystery realms? So you weren't lying about this, you really were dismembered, Ling Han said with a smile. Rong Huanxian's expression turned cold, and he said, "You dare to speak rudely in front of this lord? What, you want me to call you lord?" Ling Han said with disdain. In the past, who knows how many people knelt before this lord? Even those who were countless times stronger than you couldn't enter this lord's eyes, so who do you think you are? Rong Huanxian said disdainfully. All right. A real man does not boast about his past achievements. I am indeed only in gushing spring tier. But you are not much better. Ling Han waved his hand. Despicable brat. Rong Huanxian's expression became stern. Just as well, the owner of this body harbors extremely deep killing intent towards you. This lord also wants to kill you, so die. He brazenly attacked, and with a palm strike, countless rays of black light surged, turning into long snakes that struck towards Ling Han. Ling Han was unafraid. Although Azura Demon Emperor escaped, it was equivalent to being trapped in the body of a gushing spring tier warrior, greatly reducing the threat. Otherwise, he wouldn't have appeared at all. There was someone taller to hold the sky even if it collapsed anyway. He shook the demon birth sword and slashed towards Rong Huanxian. Damn, you can actually erase this lord's consciousness on the sword. Rong Huanxian originally had a sneer at the corner of his lips, wanting to command the tool spirit to unleash its might and directly erase Ling Han, but found that his command was like a stone sinking into the ocean. He should have immediately realized that his divine sense was missing a sliver, but who asked him to fuse with Rong Huanxian's body, causing his sensitivity to be greatly reduced? He actually only realized something was wrong when he couldn't command it. This brat was too strange. That was something he had spent tens of thousands of years of effort to slowly seep into the demon birth sword bit by bit, corroding the tool spirit and making this treasured sword his own, greatly weakening the formation's power. Only then was Rong Huanxian able to take the demon birth sword away. He never thought that in just a day's work, Ling Han would completely erase his divine sense from the demon birth sword. No, this treasured sword's tool spirit should also be destroyed, because his consciousness had already fused with the tool spirit, reaching the point of living and dying together. Since his divine sense was destroyed, it meant that the tool spirit was also dead. He sighed in relief. Otherwise, if the 10th tier spirit tool unleashed its might, his current body really wouldn't be able to withstand it. Although he was an extremely special life form, and had originally developed from a pure soul state, without a physical body, he was still a rootless duckweed. Moreover, he had been suppressed for tens of thousands of years, so his vitality had definitely been greatly damaged. Previously, in order to stop Ling Han, he had expended too much demonic qi. Now, he had just occupied a physical body, and if he immediately changed it, he would be even more seriously injured. Thus, he didn't want this physical body to be destroyed. Ling Han smiled faintly and said, "It's a waste for you to use this sword." Damn! Even with Azura Demon Emperor's temperament, he had the urge to curse. With his identity, just the fact that he was suppressed for tens of thousands of years could scare people half to death. And a junior dared to look down on him? So what if you have a 10th tier spirit tool? You can't unleash its power, so let me send you off. Rong Huanxian sneered and opened his mouth to spit. Streaks of black qi surged out, turning into black thorns. This wasn't Azura Demon Emperor's demonic qi, but Rong Huanxian's corpse qi. Ling Han's expression was stern. He held the demon birth sword horizontally with the sword tip slightly pointed downwards. Endless sword intent condensed, and small whirlpools actually appeared in the surroundings. Rong Huanxian's expression instantly changed, and he said, "What sword technique is this? Why does this lord seem to remember seeing it somewhere before?" Mysterious 3000 Ling Han attacked, and origin power surged out, turning into 5-colored light. This was the change after gushing spring tier. The spiritual qi of heaven and earth condensed, turning into swords of origin power. There were actually over 100 of them. The 3 styles of black origin could only be cultivated after reaching gushing spring tier. Previously, he relied on the power of gushing spring tier to use it, but ultimately couldn't unleash the true power of the 3 styles of black origin. Now that he reached gushing spring tier, at least this mysterious 3000 finally revealed its true prowess. This sword intent. It's the sword technique of Heaven's Sword Palace. Rong Huanxian's eyes suddenly narrowed, revealing obvious fear. However, the attack arrived so he could only parry. His hands flew and streaks of black qi surged out, but it was impossible to tell whether it was demonic qi or corpse qi. Pung pung pung, 100 swords pierced through, and the sword light was blazing, turning Rong Huanxian into a sieve. Rong Huanxian protected his head with one hand, and his heart with the other. Both were surrounded by black-colored demonic qi, and the other parts of his body were riddled with holes, blood gushing out violently. He lowered his hands. His arms had been sliced to the point that white bones could be seen, but his head and heart were completely protected. Heaven's Sword Palace, Rong Huanxian said word by word. He gritted his teeth, appearing to be extremely furious. Streaks of black qi circulated within his body, and his wounds immediately healed at a speed visible to the naked eye. Chapter 250. Previously, Ling Han had seen it before. Even if Rong Huanxian had lost an arm, the Azura Demon Emperor still forcibly regrown it. This recovery ability was really quite freaking awesome. Seeing it again, he could only be more astonished than astonished. This recovery ability was comparable to the indestructible True Fluid, but his current upper limit was only 3 drops. But when he thought about it again, what kind of cultivation level was the Azura Demon Emperor in? Although he was in the immortal level and could not unleash his full power because he was trapped in the body of a Gushing Spring tier elite, he should still have some special abilities. Otherwise, he would not have been suppressed at that time, and would have been killed a few hundred times instead. Also, Azura Demon Emperor obviously recognized the mysterious 3000, and even said the words Heaven's Sword Palace. Heaven's Sword Sect, Heaven's Sword Palace, plus 3 styles of black origin. These two had to have a close connection. Hung, I didn't think you're a disciple of Heaven's Sword Palace. You can't be left alive. Rong Huanxian said harshly. He leaped up and Hong, a black fog surged out behind him, making it seem as if he grew wings, allowing him to move freely in the air. God tier was God tier after all. Even if he was now in the body of a mere Gushing Spring tier, he could still unleash shocking power. Ling Han was unafraid. The demon birth sword attacked, exploding with resplendent sword shadows. This was a level 10 spirit weapon. Even without the circulation of martial will, just the sword itself possessed terrifying might. It was astonishingly sharp, and it could slice through anything it cut. As the sword qi danced, it was as if a sword god had descended into the world, possessing an invincible might. Rong Huanxian was continuously struck, his flesh and blood flying everywhere. However, demonic qi had powerful recovery ability, instantly healing his body and he could fight again. However, his demonic qi wasn't endless. Previously, he used up more than half of it to trap Ling Han, and he used more to possess Rong Huanxian. If he continued to recover like this, even Azura Demon Emperor wouldn't be able to hold on. Damn it, damn it! Rong Huanxian roared at the sky. This kind of trash, when I was at my peak, I could kill him 10,000 times, but now he injured me. I'm so angry. If you want to die from anger, I'm actually quite happy, Ling Han said unhurriedly. Rong Huanxian became even more furious. This brat actually dared to make sarcastic remarks? But his body was really too weak, and he couldn't control Ling Han with his demonic qi, which made his strongest weapon useless. What else could he do but take a beating? Humph, I've just escaped, so I'll spare your life. If we meet again in the future, I'll definitely tear your body into 1,000 pieces. Rong Huanxian threw out a few words of courtesy, and immediately entered the 3 lives corpse casket. The most pressing matter at hand was not to fight to the death with Ling Han, but to find the other 8 secret realms that suppress souls and replenish his soul. When that time came, he would immediately regain his divine level cultivation. Hong, the copper coffin, opened up a path and charged toward the sacrificial altar, fiercely crashing into the large crack that had previously formed. Ling Han couldn't help but extend his middle finger, making a gesture of disdain. However, the 3 lives corpse casket was also a level 10 spirit tool. Even if he swung the demon birth sword, he wouldn't be able to break it, so he could only do this. But a moment later, his expression changed greatly. The earth was rumbling and cracks opened up, covering the earth like a spider web. However, it was many times thicker than a real spider's silk. The land is turning into valleys. Fuck. This Azura demon emperor didn't forget to harm others before he left. He must have driven the Three Lives corpse casket to crash into the core of the whole secret realm, and now this secret realm was about to collapse. This old and undying monster was suppressed here for several tens of thousands of years, so he was definitely more familiar with the situation here than anyone else. Pung pung pung. Bursts of underground fire soared into the sky, and scorching hot magma also flowed out. The whole plain instantly became hell on earth. Thankfully, there were no living creatures here, or else it would definitely be a great disaster. The space was unstable and cracks appeared one after another. This secret realm was really about to be destroyed. At that moment, Ling Han couldn't care about anything else, and his figure flashed as he entered the Black Tower. Now, he only had the power to protect himself. As for what would happen to the others in the secret realm, it wasn't something he could control. Hong, a mighty force burst forth, and the whole secret realm erupted outwards. The mustard seed that the Black Tower had turned into also gushed out, and it was unknown where it was tossed. Ling Han observed through the Black Tower. The Black Tower passed through an empty region, and landed in a mountain forest. He flashed out of the Black Tower and swept his eyes around but got a shock. It turned out that a huge piece of land had smashed down just now, and now the original mountain forest was no longer there. It was completely crushed underneath, and who knew how many living creatures had died. Azura Demon Emperor really lived up to the word demon. He could obviously leave the secret realm calmly, but he just had to destroy it. If it was destroyed, then so be it, but the secret realm crashed out of the void, causing an even more terrifying massacre. The whole mountain forest was crushed, and what kind of misery was this? Fortunately, most of the secret realm's body disintegrated in the void, or else if the whole secret realm crashed out, then a country would probably be flattened, which would be even more terrifying. Ling Han shook his head. After leaving the mountain forest far away, he teleported Lu Yutong and the other two girls out of the Black Tower. Hearing Ling Han's description of the situation, Lu Yutong and Li Xichan were extremely shocked. After walking for a while, they found a small town and asked where they were. Fortunately, it was still within the boundaries of Rain Country, but it was more than 2,000 miles away from the imperial city. Ling Han didn't lack money, so he bought 4 iron blood horses as leg power and immediately rushed back to the imperial city. Iron blood horses had excellent leg power and amazing endurance, and they were in a hurry, so they returned to the imperial city after only 3 days. Some people had already returned. It was said that most people's bodies shook inexplicably and were expelled out of the secret realm, so they didn't see the scene of the earth cracking and mountains collapsing. Ling Han understood that when Azura Demon Emperor broke free, the people outside the Thunder River were already transported out of the secret realm, and because he was in the formation, he wasn't expelled. These people were really lucky, or else there definitely wouldn't be many who could return alive. Because they left for too long, Lu Yutong and Li Xichan had to return to their families and master to report that they were safe. Ling Han naturally wouldn't stop them. He returned to his own courtyard, only to see Guang Yuan and Zhu Wujiu greet him, saying that they'd been back for a few days. Guang Yuan looked at him twice and suddenly jumped up, looking like he'd seen a ghost, and exclaimed, "How come you're in gushing spring tear?" Ling Han smiled faintly and said, "Brother Guang, you're a powerful warrior of spiritual ocean tier. Why are you so shocked? Don't you think it doesn't match your status?" "Fuck your status, brat, you were only in the first layer of Poly a month ago. How come you're in the first layer of gushing spring tier now?" Guang Yuan made a big fuss, completely ignoring that he was a powerful warrior of spiritual ocean tier. Zhu Wujiu was also given a fright. Then, thinking that he had understood, he said, "Young Master Han must have obtained a great opportunity in the mystery realm, which is why he was able to complete such a leap. Congratulations, young Master Han," he said sincerely. Chapter 251. Ling Han was very freakish, but the cultivation of the 9th layer of the gushing spring tier was still a shortcoming. His battle prowess was comparable to 9 stars of the spiritual ocean tier, but encountering the 10 stars purple-clothed youngster, he was still a level weaker. In just a few moves he had fallen into a disadvantageous position, and could only take a defensive stance. However, this still made Ao Jiancheng and the purple-clothed youngster dumbstruck. When did the first layer of the gushing spring tear become so fierce? Ao Jiancheng's eyes burned with killing intent. If such a freak's cultivation also rose to the 9th layer of the spiritual ocean tier, wouldn't he be able to instantly kill him with one hand? No, this kind of genius had to be eliminated as soon as possible. He liked to challenge geniuses because the feeling of crushing geniuses was very satisfying, but if he was the one being crushed, that was definitely not what he pursued. The purple-clothed youngster shouted again and again, each move more ruthless than the last. However, Ling Han was only 1 star weaker than him in battle prowess, so how could he take him down with just a bit more effort? Besides, Ling Han still had too many trump cards that he hadn't revealed. If possible, Ling Han really wanted to kill Ao Jiancheng. This should be Ao Feng's beloved son, right? Killing him would definitely make Ao Feng's heart ache for a while. However, Ling Han sensed that there was a divine sense following Ao Jiancheng. That Winter Moon sex elite was constantly paying attention to Ao Jiancheng, and once Ling Han unleashed the demon birth sword, it would definitely draw that person over. Ling Han shook his head. He could only contend with it with his own strength. I underestimated you. The purple-clothed youngster stopped, but not to stop the battle. He drew his sword with a flip of his hand, and a cold light shone like autumn water. This was a spirit tool, and there were vein-like patterns on the sword's body, a total of 9. Awaken! He shouted lightly. Wang, wang, wang. The vein-like patterns on the sword's body were activated one by one and lit up, but only 8 of them were lit up, and the 9th vein-like pattern wasn't activated. Being able to make me use the long brow sword, even if you die, you should be proud. The purple-clothed youngster smiled proudly and leapt out with his sword, slashing towards Ling Han, who the spirit tool sliced through the air, and 4 flashes of sword chi danced in unison, extremely terrifying. Ling Han frowned, and without saying another word, he immediately turned and ran. If he wanted to win against the purple-clothed youngster, he could only use the demon birth sword and unleash the mysterious 3000, but once the demon birth sword was unleashed, under the perception of chi, the divine sense following Ao Jiancheng would definitely detect it. That wouldn't do. As long as he charged into the spiritual ocean tier, his strength would have a shocking breakthrough, so why fight to the death here? Want to run? The purple-clothed youngster snorted, and hurriedly broke into a chase. Ao Jiancheng also unleashed his movement technique and followed behind. Ling Han was too freakish, and if such a genius wasn't eliminated as soon as possible, he wouldn't be able to eat or sleep in peace. However, once Ling Han unleashed his shadow wind movement technique, who could catch up? Hunyo was one, but in the spiritual ocean tier, unless one was naturally skilled in movement techniques and had a bloodline ability in this aspect, wanting to catch up to Ling Han who unleashed shadow wind movement technique was just empty talk. After only running for a few minutes, the gap between the two sides had already widened by a large margin, and Ao Jiancheng even overtook the purple-clothed youngster, but the distance between him and Ling Han was still continuously increasing. After chasing for a few more minutes, Ao Jiancheng could only dispiritedly stop, because Ling Han had already disappeared from his field of vision. He couldn't help but hate inwardly. If he'd known earlier, he would have personally attacked and killed Ling Han, not giving him the chance to escape, but who would have thought that this first layer of the gushing spring tier not only had nature-defying battle prowess, but also speed that was so fast that it made people dumbfounded. He hadn't seen Hunyo's speed, or else he would have definitely collapsed. Senior brother Jiancheng, you killed that. The purple-clothed youngster caught up, wanting to ask if Ao Jiancheng killed Ling Han, but the moment the words left his mouth, he knew something was wrong, because Ao Jiancheng's expression was rather ugly. Ao Jiancheng's face was full of killing intent. He swore that he definitely wouldn't give Ling Han a second chance. After Ling Han ran for a while, his figure flashed, and he entered the Black Tower. It was time to break through. When he advanced into the spiritual ocean tier, how would he sweep through the world? Even if it was the 9th layer of the spiritual ocean tier, so what? He wouldn't need to use the demon birth sword to defeat them all. The 9-eyed beast wolf was still alive, but it was heavily injured. Now that it had woken up, it immediately bared its teeth and roared angrily, revealing its ferocity. Still so fierce. Ling Han slapped, and the 9-eyed beast wolf was instantly shocked to death. He reached out, and with a wave of his hand, all the blood in the beast wolf's body was extracted and attached to his body. Among them, A few drops of blood were actually silver, as if mercury had condensed into a sphere. This was the nine-eyed beast wolf's blood essence, which was also the symbol of royalty, and there were only these few drops. Don't complain that it was too little. Only after reaching the shattering void tier could the blood in one's body turn silver, and a single drop could kill a flower blossom tier elite. Ling Han absorbed these essences, which transformed into endless spiritual essence that nourished his body. The blood quickly dried up at a speed visible to the naked eye, turning into bloody scars that stuck to his skin. However, the color had already become extremely faint, because the essence within had been absorbed. Ling Han had a feeling that his body was about to explode. Absorbing the blood essence of a spiritual ocean tier beast king was extremely beneficial to him. But this wasn't enough. Ling Han waved his hand again, and the nine-eyed beast wolf was instantly dismembered. Pieces of bones were stripped out and danced in the air. He put his hands together, and drops of white bone marrow immediately emerged from the bones. Blood, bone marrow, these were the nine-eyed beast wolf's true essences. Normally, the bones needed to be continuously boiled, and only after at least a day and a night would the bone marrow be completely mixed into the soup, but in the Black Tower, it wasn't so troublesome. Ling Han only needed to raise his hand to do it. He opened his mouth and the bone marrow essence instantly flew into his mouth and was swallowed by him. Wang, the five elements chaos lotus swayed lightly, and origin power flowed wildly in his body, sending the bone marrow essence to every corner of his body, making his bones stronger and his muscles firmer. More spirit medicine. Ling Han waved his hand, and stalks of spirit medicine uprooted from the ground and lined up in front of him. He picked some spirit medicine from the Devil Life Mystery Realm and the Winter Moon Sex Medicinal Garden, choosing some that strengthened his physique and strengthened his foundation. He pressed his right hand and instantly, the medicinal essence was extracted. Ling Han opened his mouth and swallowed like a whale. Hong! His entire body seemed to have become a pill furnace. There were all kinds of spirit medicine in his body, as well as the nine-eyed beast wolf's bone marrow and blood. He turned his body into a furnace, refining these essences and nourishing himself. He felt like he was about to explode. Not enough, I haven't reached the limit yet, Ling Han said inwardly. He wanted to break through the instant his body reached the limit, and solidify his foundation to an unshakable level. Hong hong, hong. Waves of energy exploded inside Ling Han's body. His skin was already cracking and streaks of blood flowed out, but his eyes were shining. He was about to touch the door to the limit. His skin continuously exploded. Even the body of rock cliff couldn't withstand such a collision of the violent power inside his body. It was at this moment. Chapter 252. Ling Han had long been certified as a black-grade high-level alchemist, but it was a very long process from verification to issuance of identification. However, 2 months was enough to complete it. With the identity of a black-grade high-level alchemist, it was equivalent to him having an exemption from death. He brought Hunyo to Tianyi. Young Master Han. Young Master Han is here. After Xiaoing led him into the main hall, many alchemists came up to greet him, their eyes fervent. Ling Han nodded with a smile, and said to Fu Yuansheng, "My alchemist certification is completed? It has been completed a long time ago, but young Master Han has been in the Devil Sky Mystery Realm all this time, so I have not been able to hand it over to young Master Han. Please allow me to retrieve it." Fu Yuansheng hurriedly personally fetched a brocade box, and respectfully handed it to Ling Han. Ling Han took it and opened it. Aside from 3 silver-colored badges, there was also a crystal-like object inside. As long as origin power was injected into it, it would be activated and form a screen of light. Ling Han's name, when he had been certified as a black-grade high-level alchemist, and the witness were clearly written on it. Young Master Han, to tell you the truth, Tianyi belongs to the Alchemist Society, and the Alchemist Society is the organization of all alchemists in the world, responsible for the certification of alchemists and serving the interests of alchemists. Young Master Han is not yet 20, but is already a black-grade high-level alchemist, alarming the entire branch in the 9 nations of the desolate north. The masters all said that they hoped young Master Han could go to the Star Brilliance Palace Hall for a chat. Fu Yuansheng said with a smile, His eyes filled with uncontrollable envy. The Star Brilliance Palace Hall was the highest branch of the Alchemist Society in the 9 nations of the desolate north. There were a total of 7 Earth-grade alchemists in charge, and every one of them was a truly important person. Now, they actually said that they wanted to see Ling Han. What kind of honor was that? Ling Han did not take it to heart, but instead felt a bit uncomfortable. Asking him to see them? Based on what? If they want to see me, then let them come themselves. I have no plans to leave Rain Country for now, Ling Han said calmly. Some people immediately wanted to criticize him, but when they thought of how freakish Ling Han was, he was someone who had concocted a pseudo-Earth-grade foundation-building pill and advanced to become a Black-grade high-level alchemist, it meant that he had already taken half a step into becoming an Earth-grade alchemist. Then, an ordinary Earth-grade alchemist really did not have the right to point fingers in front of Ling Han. Fu Yuansheng wiped off his sweat. In his mind, being able to go to the Star Brilliance Palace Hall should be something that every alchemist yearned for even in their dreams, but Ling Han was different. Not only was he completely uninterested, he even wanted these incomparably esteemed Lord Alchemists to personally come see him. Ling Han waved his hand and said, "Let's put this matter aside for now. There's something I need your help with." "Young Master Han, feel free to speak your mind," Fu Yuansheng hurriedly said with a bow, looking as if he was worthy of Ling Han's help. Ling Han nodded and said, "The Lu family is marrying off their daughter the day after tomorrow. You know about this, right?" "I know." Fu Yuansheng glanced at Ling Han and was slightly hesitant, but still said, "According to the information leaked by the Lu family, that Feng Yan has already entered the Winter Moon sect, and is even a core disciple, so the Lu family agreed to this marriage." "Bullshit." Ling Han shook his head. Even if Feng Yan wanted to marry Lu Yutong, the Lu family might not agree, because although the Winter Moon sect was powerful, there were 2 Black-grade high-level alchemists standing behind Ling Han, who also had a shocking background. On the other hand, if you married a disciple of the Winter Moon sect, what benefits could you bring to the clan? A married daughter would be like water that had been poured out, and a marriage alliance usually only had symbolic meaning. Just like how many princesses of the imperial family had been married off all these years, and they were basically all betrothed to the 8 great clans, but the 8 great clans were still the 8 great clans. None of them were very close to the imperial family. On the contrary, the 8 great clans still huddled together, openly and secretly opposing the imperial family. The Winter Moon sect was not in the 9 nations of the desolate north, and if they rashly reached out, they would first arouse the displeasure of the imperial family. The imperial family obviously did not dare to challenge the Winter Moon sect. But couldn't they make things difficult for the Lu family? Thus, even if the Lu family married Lu Yutong to Feng Yan, it would only have a symbolic meaning, not to mention that it was Feng Ming. Ling Han guessed that Feng Yan must have given the Lu family some benefits, and this benefit was so great that the Lu family would not hesitate to sacrifice a precious daughter. "Young Master Han, the Winter Moon sect has an elite of the spiritual infant tier keeping watch. Unless the lords of the Star Brilliance Palace Hall appear, it would be difficult." He knew that the favor Ling Han wanted to help was definitely related to Lu Yutong's marriage. Ling Han smiled and said, "There's no need to go through so much trouble. It's only Feng Yan. When the time comes, you just need to bring some people here to support me. There's no need to make a move." Fu Yuansheng hurriedly nodded. Supporting him was naturally not a problem. He was one of the 2 big bosses of alchemy in Rain Country, so even the Lu family would not dare to say anything. Moreover, he still had a colossal force like the Alchemist Society behind him, so even the Winter Moon sect would not dare to do anything to him. And Ling Han was also a Black-grade high-level alchemist, and furthermore he had 1 foot in Earth-grade. Even the higher-ups of the Winter Moon sect would have to treat him with respect. What more when Feng Yan was only a disciple of the younger generation? With such a thought, Fu Yuansheng was relieved. Whether Ling Han could snatch Lu Yutong back was another matter, but at least he himself would not be in any danger. However, would Ling Han really be able to snatch Lu Yutong back? If the Lu family married off their daughter, no matter how much of a piece of trash the man was, for the sake of the clan's reputation, they would definitely not allow Ling Han to take her away. Putting aside spiritual pedestal tier warriors, even if a few spiritual ocean tier warriors stepped forward, they would be able to deal with Ling Han. What was Ling Han planning to do? Fu Yuansheng was very curious, but Ling Han did not say much, and very soon he took his leave. In the next 2 days, Feng Yan's performance was very high profile. He challenged the third imperial prince, Qin Yi and Zhao Huan, the 3 core disciples, and won with overwhelming advantage. Because this was not the challenge tournament at the end of the year, even if he won, he could not possibly become a core disciple. But now, everyone knew that Feng Yan had already become a direct disciple of the Winter Moon sect, and this status was many times higher than that of a core disciple of Huyang University. Feng Yan would definitely leave Rain Country, so this was obviously a demonstration of his power. He wanted to make his name known before he left, and step on the younger generation of Rain Country to rise to the top. According to the spectators, Feng Yan had already risen to the 9th layer of Gushing Spring tier. If he could take another step forward and advance to Spiritual Ocean tier, then with his current age, he could be said to be the youngest person in Spiritual Ocean tier in the history of Rain Country. Compared to Feng Yan's high profile, Ling Han was extremely low-key. He just sat in his own courtyard all day, and he was very calm. Qi Yongyi and the others all came over to him, wanting to console him. Feng Yan was clearly digging a hole for Ling Han, and he was just waiting for him to step into it on the day of the wedding. At that time, the Lu family and Feng Yan would have enough reason to kill Ling Han on the spot. How did you manage to break through to Gushing Spring tier? They had not even begun to advise him when they were greatly shocked by Ling Han's cultivation level. Chapter 253. Ling Han smiled faintly and said, I just broke through to Gushing Spring tier. What's so surprising about that? What's so surprising about that? Do you know that among these people, the earliest among them had already reached the 9th layer of Element Gathering tier 2 years ago, but even now, they were still in the 9th layer of Element Gathering tier. What about you? A few months ago, you were only in the 4th layer of Element Gathering tier, but now you've left them in the dust and advanced into Gushing Spring tier. This isn't surprising, it's frightening. Ling Han, you've incurred the wrath of the masses. How many of your victims are trapped in the peak stage of Element Gathering tier? Qi Yongyi immediately called out. Even Bailey Tengyu nodded repeatedly. He had also reached the 9th layer of Element Gathering tier, and was qualified to attempt to break through to Gushing Spring tier. But having the right to break through and actually breaking through, there was a huge gap that would take a long time to fill. If luck was good, perhaps he could complete it before the age of 25. Ling Han wasn't even 18 yet. Martial art couldn't afford to be short of a few years. Without breaking through to the Flower Blossom tier, everyone in the world was a commoner and only had a lifespan of 100 years. That's right. Everyone was both envious and happy for Ling Han. Gushing Spring tier before the age of 18, this can probably rank top 10 in the history of Rain Country. Li Dongyu said ruefully. Ling Han only smiled. If these people knew that Hu Niu was already in the 9th layer of Poly, who knew how scared they'd be. However, Hu Niu had an ability to conceal her presence. If he didn't have a sliver of divine sense of heaven tier, he wouldn't be able to detect it. Even Guang Yuan didn't know that the little girl had already reached the 9th layer of Poly. He only thought that she was just a little stranger than normal children, full of energy, able to eat, and abnormally strong. Ling Han, tomorrow's wedding, are you really going to attend? Everyone finally got to the main topic. Why not? Ling Han asked in return. That's the Lu family. Qi Yongyi said with a frown. So what if it's the Lu family? Ling Han said with a smile. With 2 consecutive questions, everyone didn't know what to say. Obviously, Ling Han didn't think much of the Lu family. Brother Ling, I'll go with you tomorrow. Li Hao said through gritted teeth. He'd received so much help from Ling Han, and it was time for him to repay. And me? Jin Wuji said lowly. Zhu Wujiu only patted the scabbard, his eyes sharp and filled with determination. Qi Yongyi and the others all sighed with emotion. A few months ago, Jin Wuji and Ling Han had still been enemies, but now he was willing to risk his life with Ling Han. Also a few months ago, and not only did they not reconcile they Ling Han and Feng Lu family and Lu but clan Feng clan they Ling Han Lu and deep knot. Ling Han waved his hand and said, tomorrow, all of you can go and join in the fun. However, no one is allowed to make a move. When Qi Yongyi, Li Dongyu, and the others heard that Ling Han wanted them to go together, their hearts couldn't help but tighten. They didn't have the courage to go against the Lu family, but when they heard the latter part of Ling Han's words, they couldn't help but blush. Even if Ling Han needed help, it wouldn't be the turn of these few poly realms. They really thought too highly of themselves. Ling Han's gaze swept over Zhu Wujiu and the other two, filled with dignity, causing the three of them to involuntarily nod their heads, not daring to say anything else. Then I don't need to do anything, right? Guang Yuan laughed. Ling Han chuckled and said, if no one hits me, Brother Guang naturally doesn't have to do anything. But if there's an expert, then Brother Guang will naturally have to play his role as a bodyguard. With Brother Guang's strength and reputation, you should be able to fight 10 of them at the very least. I say, Bratling, aren't you trying to harm me? Guang Yuan instantly looked distressed. Ling Han only smiled. If Guang Yuan didn't shrink back tomorrow, then he wouldn't mind helping Guang Yuan. In the future, putting aside the spiritual pedestal tier, it wasn't impossible for Guang Yuan to reach the flower blossom tier or spiritual infant tier. But he wasn't a philanthropist, so how could he give out such a great favor for no reason? If one wanted him to train them, then they would have to prove that they were qualified to be his friend and gain his trust. At present, Li Hao and Zhu Wujiu were qualified. Jin Wuji still needed to be observed for a while, and Qi Yongyi, Bailey Tingyun, and the others could only be considered casual acquaintances. Qi Yongyi and the others tried to persuade him for a while, but seeing that Ling Han was completely unmoved, they could only leave helplessly. After a while, the third imperial prince quietly arrived. I never thought that Feng Yan would actually become a disciple of the Winter Moon sect, and even become the disciple of an elite of the spiritual infant tier, the third imperial prince said as soon as he entered, his expression filled with envy and unwillingness. He was originally the strongest prodigy of his age group, the leader of the 3 core disciples of Huyang Academy, but yesterday he was challenged by Feng Yan, and ended up being completely defeated. This was definitely because Feng Yan had obtained the secret teachings of the Winter Moon sect, which was why he could surpass him in cultivation level and easily defeat him. On what basis? Feng Yan was only a true disciple of Huyang University, while he was an imperial prince of Rain Country, a core disciple. Why did the Winter Moon sect choose Feng Yan and not him? This caused the third imperial prince to feel both jealousy and hatred. Ling Han smiled calmly. The third imperial prince's flustered and exasperated expression instantly made him much more humble. He couldn't be bothered to pay attention to the third imperial prince's complaints, and acted as if he hadn't heard anything. Ling Han, what plans do you have for tomorrow? The third imperial prince asked seriously. This was the real reason he had come. Ling Han looked at the third imperial prince and said, Your Highness, what plans do you want me to have? The third imperial prince could not help but smile. In his eyes, Ling Han was only a stepping stone that could allow him to ascend to a higher position, and had never been a friend. Naturally, he had to prioritize his own interests over everything else. He said, Feng Yan is very powerful now, but it won't be long before he leaves Rain Country, so I hope that you can endure your anger for a while. Your Highness means that I should stay here tomorrow, Ling Han said leisurely. I know that the girl from the Liu family is an exquisite beauty, but we are here to accomplish great things, so how can we be disturbed by personal feelings? Now, if you and Feng Yan have a conflict, even if you are killed by him, Imperial Father will only turn a blind eye to it. So endure your anger for a while in exchange for a bright future, the third Imperial Prince advised. Ling Han could hear the attitude of the Imperial family from his words. No matter how much of a fight or commotion there was between him and Feng Yan, the Imperial family would not care. For example, when Feng Yan had ambushed them on the streets in the middle of the night, not a single Imperial guard had appeared. Furthermore, when he had crippled Feng Luo's arms, the Imperial family had similarly ignored him. Even after Feng Luo had been killed by him, the Imperial family had not pursued the matter upon his return. There was no need to mention Feng Yan. Now that he had entered the Winter Moon sect, the Imperial family would definitely not dare to touch him. Meanwhile, Ling Han had the support of 2 alchemy giants. Now that he himself had become such a giant, even the Imperial family did not dare to touch him. Unless Ling Han did something to shake the rule of the royal family. So, you can fight however you want. After all, it's a personal grudge. However, the backers of both sides could not make a move. Whether it was Fu Yuanshang who killed Feng Yan, or an elite of the Winter Moon sect who killed Ling Han, the Imperial family would not be able to give an explanation to the other side. If the backers of both sides took action, Then the royal family would be forced to intervene. Ling Han smiled. Now that he knew the imperial family's bottom line, he could use it to his advantage. I will attend the wedding tomorrow, he said. You. The third prince was infuriated. Chapter 254. The third imperial prince had thought that his earnest persuasion would be able to convince Ling Han, but the latter did not listen to him at all, and he could not help but be furious. If it had been anyone else, he would definitely have reprimanded him harshly, and possibly even slapped him across the face, but when he thought of the two big bosses of alchemy standing behind Ling Han, he could only suppress the fury in his heart and said, Ling Han, what right do you have to fight with Feng Yan? Putting aside the question of whether you can defeat him, the Liu family only needs to send out a random spiritual ocean tier elite, and you won't even be able to step through the door. Ling Han smiled and said, I did not think that your highness would be so concerned about me. The third imperial prince could naturally tell that this was sarcasm. Instantly his face darkened and he said, Ling Han, don't let your lust get to your head. Don't forget that we are here to accomplish great things. Ling Han shook his head internally. He thought that the third imperial prince definitely did not know that he had become a black-grade high-level alchemist, or else he would naturally have much more confidence in him, and would not dare to speak to him with such an attitude. In truth, he did not deliberately hide it, so it was actually very easy to investigate his identity as a black-grade high-level alchemist. At least, the Spirit Treasures Pavilion found out very quickly, but how could the third imperial prince's information be so outdated? That was because someone had done something to prevent the third imperial prince from discovering this fact. In the imperial city, the only one who had the ability to do this was the Rain Emperor. Everyone said that the current Rain Emperor was a great strategist, and was possibly the most far-sighted ruler since the founding of Rain Country. Then, how could the Rain Emperor not know that his sons were making small moves and forming cliques? Even if he knew, he did not interfere or stop them. Obviously, the Rain Emperor wanted to see which of his sons was the most capable before he would pass on the throne. This could also be considered as a test for the princes. The pitiful eldest and third imperial princes were still in the dark, thinking that they had done everything very discreetly, but they did not think that everything was under the Rain Emperor's eyes. Ling Han sighed. The third imperial prince was probably not qualified. If he had made up his mind to support him with the power he had, he would have been able to push the third imperial prince up no matter how useless he was. But who asked the third imperial prince to cut off this path himself? Your Highness, Yutong is my friend, and I will never give up on a friend, Ling Han said. The third prince was practically exploding with rage. He had tried his best to persuade Ling Han, but why didn't he listen? He angrily said, Don't act so noble and virtuous. If you want beauties, I can give them to you. 1,000, 10,000 is fine. Even Ziyan is fine. In his heart, even Ziyan was just a tool he could use. As long as she could help him ascend the throne, he could abandon her at any time. Ling Han shook his head and said, People who walk different paths cannot make plans together. Your Highness, please return. The third prince's face darkened, and he said, Ling Han, have you forgotten that the Eye of Truth coveted the nation's secret treasure? The crime is not light. Is your Highness threatening me? Ling Han asked with a smile. You're on your own. The third prince snorted and left in a huff. Quite a temper. Ling Han could not help but smile. If this guy knew that he was actually a black-grade high-level alchemist, what kind of expression would he have on his face? Would he be so regretful that he would want to smash his head into a wall? Not long after, another person arrived. The eldest imperial prince. Like the third imperial prince, he was also trying to persuade Ling Han not to attend the wedding tomorrow. His attitude was much more forceful than the third imperial prince's, but in the end it was the same. He was snubbed, and even slammed his hand on the table before leaving in anger. Ling Han sighed. This was obviously his private matter, so why was he not only criticizing him, but also acting as if he had been wronged? What kind of logic was this? Is young Master Ling here? It was at this moment that there was another knock on the door. There were really a lot of people here today. If it were not for the fact that he had already put Hunyo into the Black Tower to rest, the little girl would probably have been woken up a few times by the noise, and now she would jump out in anger to bite someone. Ling Han walked over to open the door, and saw a tall and slender young man standing at the door. His appearance was handsome, and he was dressed very casually. However, there was an innate aura about him that made him seem imposing even when he was not angry. "I am Qichong Yu. Please forgive me for disturbing you so late at night, young Master Ling." This young man was about 20 years old, and had a cultivation level of the 9th layer of Pali. Among the younger generation of the imperial city, he was not at all outstanding. Another one with the surname Qi. Ling Han smiled faintly and said, "So it is the 7th imperial prince. Fine." He really had quite a bit of face. Now the 3 imperial princes who were most qualified to compete for the throne had all come to visit him. But did he not know that the 7th imperial prince was also trying to persuade him not to attend the wedding tomorrow? The 7th imperial prince also smiled and said, "Young Master Ling will definitely attend the wedding tomorrow, right?" What the 7th imperial prince means is that it would be best if I don't go. Ling Han countered. "No." The 7th imperial prince shook his head, anger rising on his face as he said, "This is the world of Rain Country, but Feng Yan is using the Winter Moon sect as a threat to forcefully marry a woman of our country. If I were the emperor, I would definitely send Feng Yan flying with a single punch. I don't think the Winter Moon sect would go against Rain Country for a mere disciple. Otherwise, the Winter Moon sect would really become the laughingstock of the North region." Ling Han had lived 2 lives, so his judgment was naturally very sharp. He could tell that although the 7th imperial prince's words were a little pretentious, it was also his natural acting. However, as an imperial prince, his actions and words would all be a little exaggerated. "In that case, the 7th imperial prince is here to support me?" The 7th imperial prince nodded and said, "Young Master Ling, feel free to do whatever you want tomorrow. I am willing to be young Master Ling's strong support." Ling Han could not help but smile and said, "Why does the 7th imperial prince have such confidence in me? The Liu family has a powerful warrior of spiritual pedestal tier watching over them. With my meager status, I don't think I would even be able to pass through the front doors, right?" These were the words that the eldest and 3rd imperial princes had been trying to persuade him all this time, but now he was using them to test the 7th imperial prince. He did not believe that someone who had the ability to fight for the throne was a hothead. Moreover, they had not even met once before, so why would the 7th imperial prince come to support him? The 7th imperial prince laughed loudly and said, "There is no need to resort to insinuations in front of an honest person. To tell you the truth, I have already asked around, and young Master Ling has just obtained 3 silver badges. In Rain Country, even my imperial father would not dare to do anything to young Master Ling. At most, he would tie young Master Ling up and drive him out of the country." As expected, this guy knew that he had become a black-grade high-level alchemist, and that was why he was supporting him so wholeheartedly. Ling Han thought for a moment and said, "What kind of support can the 7th imperial prince give me?" The 7th imperial prince could not help but be delighted. He knew that Ling Han had already begun to accept him, or else he would not have asked such a question. He hurriedly said, "Although I do not have much power, I am willing to wave the flag and cheer for young Master Ling. I also have the power of 2 spiritual ocean tier martial artists that I can use." Ling Han was surprised. Spiritual pedestal tier martial artists were the strongest martial artists in Rain Country. Even the current Rain Emperor could only invite them, and could not forcibly subjugate them. Thus, it was not a simple matter for the 7th imperial prince to be able to use the battle prowess of spiritual ocean tier martial artists. One had to know that Ling Han had only managed to rope in a spiritual ocean tier bodyguard, and this bodyguard had not even passed the test. "Then I shall accept your invitation. Thank you, 7th imperial prince," he said with a smile. Chapter 255. There were 2 spiritual oceans in Ling Han's body, one at the bottom as earth, and one at the top as heaven, symbolizing yin and yang. When he used origin power, he could selectively activate one of the 2 spiritual oceans, but if necessary, both spiritual oceans could operate at the same time. One yin and one yang opposites, yet it could gush out terrifying spiritual power, allowing his power to soar to the 7th layer of the spiritual ocean tier. Dealing with a nobody like Zhao Hongcheng, He obviously didn't need to go all out. The rotation of the Earth's spiritual ocean tier was enough to support enough power. He mainly comprehended the minute changes of War Elephant Fist, improving his fist art. All techniques in the world lead to the same goal, so he could cultivate 7 flashes of sword chi, which also meant that he could reach the level of 7 flashes of fist chi. However, this required a process, and now that he was fighting Zhao Hongcheng, he was shortening this process. Die. Zhao Hongcheng was like a madman. The 1-hour time limit was approaching, yet he was still tangled with Ling Han, which meant that he and Ling Han were both going to be eliminated. This made him unable to restrain his anger, feeling that Ling Han was extremely detestable. He obviously couldn't beat him, so why did he have to tangle with him like this? Die your sister! Ling Han roared and suddenly shot out a punch. 4 flashes of fist chi burst forth, turning into 4 silver fists that evolved into 4 dragons and elephants, crushing towards Zhao Hongcheng. What? Everyone cried out in shock. Was this a breakthrough in battle? If it was true, then this guy was too terrifying. To be able to turn pressure into motivation in battle and breakthrough, he was definitely a genius among geniuses. Impossible, this person should have formed 4 flashes of fist chi long ago, but had been concealing it before, and only now did it erupt, purposely giving people a scare. He wants people to think that he broke through in battle so as to attract the sex attention. He's really scheming. Really too naive. Everyone shook their heads. They were all conceited, but even they might not be able to achieve such a breakthrough, so they naturally subconsciously thought it was fake. Otherwise, wouldn't it mean that they were inferior to the other? However, there were also a few people who revealed thoughtful expressions. What if this was true? Fortunately, it was only 4 flashes of fist chi, and he had just stepped into the stage of great accomplishment, not yet qualified to be called a ruler. 4 flashes of fist chi to 3 flashes was like the suppression of a 4th-layer martial artist to a 3rd-layer martial artist. One was the middle stage, one was the early stage, and the difference was still very big. Thus, when this fist smashed over, Zhao Hongcheng was sent flying along with his sword. At this time, almost an hour had passed. The 10 people ranked in the 30s all had their eyes on Ling Han. This guy just experienced an evenly matched battle and had no time to recover. So if they could challenge Ling Han, it would be equivalent to picking up a soft persimmon. Zhao Hongcheng lay on the ground, his face full of disbelief. He was actually so unlucky, actually encountering an opponent who broke through in battle. Top 30 step forward. The spiritual pedestal tier elite said. Begin the next round. Shua, a girl with a graceful figure, was the fastest and arrived in front of Ling Han before the others. Then, she smiled charmingly at the surrounding people and said, "This little sister thanks the brothers for letting me win." This was a very beautiful girl, and added with her alluring figure, people couldn't help but take a few more glances at her. When she leapt out earlier, she deliberately twisted her hips and puffed out her chest, showing off her figure to the fullest, causing the other 9 people to involuntarily stare at her, which was why they managed to snatch the soft persimmon Ling Han. The other 9 people all secretly cursed their bad luck. Who asked them to have lustful thoughts? Just obediently admit defeat. The girl attacking Ling Han. She was stronger than Zhao Hongcheng, with cultivation at the 3rd layer of the spiritual ocean tier. However, if it was just that, she obviously couldn't match Ling Han, who had 6 stars of battle prowess. Since she dared to challenge Ling Han, she obviously had something to rely on. The moment she attacked, she drew out an exquisite pagoda. It was completely made of jade, and multiple patterns shone, forming a visible ripple that surged towards Ling Han. Ling Han immediately felt that small pagoda emitted an extremely disgusted divine sense. This divine sense obviously wasn't directed at him, but at the exquisite pagoda. This tool spirit was quite interesting. Couldn't bear to see other pagoda-shaped spirit tools? The ripple was like a tsunami, extremely turbulent. Ling Han punched at empty air, and a pattern formed in front of him. It quickly spread out, and like a shield it protected him behind. The ripple emitted by the exquisite pagoda surged over, creating multiple layers of ripples, and multiple cracks immediately appeared on the pattern. When this shield shattered, the attack emitted by the exquisite pagoda also ended. The woman couldn't help but be shocked. The power used in this punch was a bit too coincidental, wasn't it? Not one bit more, not one bit less, as if he had exchanged blows with her before. But at this moment it wasn't the time for her to be shocked. She immediately shook the pagoda lightly again, releasing a ripple. At the same time her figure pounced out, drawing her sword to attack. Xiao 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 for flashes of sword light spread out, their might oppressive. As expected, the reason she could reach this step wasn't because she relied on the might of a spirit tool, but because she herself indeed possessed astonishing strength. Ling Han faced her head-on, and continued to use her to practice the war elephant fist. Some people paid attention to Ling Han, and couldn't help but look surprised, because this woman's strength was obviously stronger than Zhao Hongcheng's, but Ling Han could still fight back and forth, and didn't seem to be at a disadvantage at all. In other words, Ling Han had held back his strength earlier. Since that was the case, could it be that this wasn't Ling Han's full strength? If he can enter the next round, I'll choose him as my opponent, a man with an imposing appearance said. His cultivation level of the 8th layer of the spiritual ocean tier was extremely extraordinary. Haha, senior brother, you actually has the desire to fight against a mere 1st layer of the spiritual ocean tier. Someone said with a smile, but immediately revealed a doubtful expression. Senior brother, aren't you thinking too highly of him? Senior brother, you revealed a hint of a smile, and the flames of battle flickered in his eyes. No, my feeling can't be wrong. This brat is worth a fight. Che. The 7 sons of Ao family snorted at the same time, appearing very displeased. 7 sons of Ao family, what are you snorting for? Are you looking for a beating? Senior brother, you walked over. His face filled with undisguised disgust. You've lost to me. Ao Jianchong shook his finger, appearing very disapproving. Haha, you Caillou, when can you defeat old 7th? Then come and challenge us again. Ao Xinglai said. Ao Jianchong wasn't the youngest among the 7 sons of Ao family, but because he was the weakest, he was ranked last. Hearing Ao Xinglai's words, Ao Jianchong couldn't help but reveal a hint of anger. The competition within the Ao family was fierce, and he wasn't willing to sit in the position of old 7th. Yu Caillou said, when I advance to the 9th layer of the spiritual ocean tier, I'll challenge you all one by one. You speak as if you're very powerful. Ao Fengxing picked his ear, then blew on his finger, his disdain evident in his words. Chapter 256. Although Ling Han was only in Gushing Spring tier, he had the eyesight of a heaven tier warrior. As long as the opponent's cultivation was below heaven tier, he could see through the opponent's background with a single glance. But now he actually couldn't see through Yan Tianzhao. Yan Tianzhao reached heaven tier? Impossible, this was absolutely impossible. Even he, the Alchemy Emperor, used 200 years to reach this step, which was already unprecedented. Although it was impossible that there would be no one in the future, it was impossible for a 15 or 16-year-old heaven tier warrior to appear. Ling Han observed carefully, and couldn't help but frown slightly. He could faintly feel an extremely evil aura on Yan Tianzhao, but he couldn't tell what it was. What was certain was that this aura formed a barrier, making it impossible for Yan Tianzhao to pass through. Ling Han couldn't help but sigh inwardly. In his last life, although he met abnormal existences like Sword Emperor and Phoenix Maiden, he stood at the peak of the world at that time, so meeting so many exceptional geniuses was naturally not strange. But in this life, first there was Rong Huanxian, who obtained the inheritance of the Thousand Corpse sect and could have grown into an abnormal level. Later, he was taken over by Azura Demon Emperor, so his future achievements would definitely be even more terrifying. Now there was Yan Tianzhao, who could be completely unfathomable to Ling Han, which meant that his abnormal level was definitely not low. He was only in Gushing Spring tier, and in a tiny rain country at that. He already met 2 existences that could very possibly be nature-defying in the future. Then how many such abnormal existences would there be in the 9 nations of the desolate north, the whole north region, or even the vast lands? There were really too many geniuses in this life, and he met them so casually. So it's little brother Yan. Ling Han smiled. He looked to his left and right and asked, where's Lady Yan? My mother is feeling slightly ill and is resting at home, unable to come, Yan Tianzhao said with a frown. He looked like a good young man, causing others to involuntarily have a good impression of him. Ling Han nodded and said, little brother Yan, are you planning to cheer for me? Haha. I'm only here to attend Big Sister Yutong's wedding today and drink a cup of wedding wine. I don't know anything else. Yan Tianzhao laughed and retreated to the side. He could advance and retreat freely, and he didn't seem like a young man at all. This was noticed by some of the old fellows, and they couldn't help but click their tongues in wonder. When did such a person appear in the imperial capital? Not only was he mature, even they couldn't see through his cultivation. It was truly strange. Ling Han! A loud shout rang out, and a tall and slender man walked over saying, "What are you doing here?" Lu Buqing, Lu Yutong's seventh uncle. Ling Han pondered over his attitude and said, "Should I come to congratulate Yutong on her wedding?" Lu Buqing looked deeply at Ling Han, and was similarly pondering over Ling Han's words. He frowned slightly and said, "If you're only here to enjoy the wedding wine, you're naturally welcome. But if you want to make trouble, the Lu clan is not a place where you can do as you please." Ling Han smiled and nodded. From Lu Buqing's tone and words, he couldn't sense the attitude of the Lu clan. They were just discussing the matter as it stood. Just wait and see. Almost all the guests had arrived, and everyone took their seats. Most of the guests' seats had already been arranged, but there were some exceptions, such as Ling Han. However, there was naturally an emergency seat, and he wouldn't have to stand at the side. "Fu Yuansheng, Grandmaster Fu has arrived," a servant announced along the way, instantly giving everyone a shock. That was Fu Yuansheng, one of the two big shots of alchemy in Rain Country, and his status was second only to the Rain Emperor. The patriarch of the Lu clan personally came out to welcome Fu Yuansheng. The two of them walked side by side, talking and smiling, as if they were having a pleasant conversation. The Lu clan was marrying off a daughter, and they actually managed to invite Fu Yuansheng to come. What kind of honor was this? But everyone present was clear that Fu Yuansheng had not come because of the Lu clan, but because of Ling Han. They had long heard that Ling Han was very much favored by the two big shots of alchemy. Today, Fu Yuansheng had personally come to enjoy the wedding wine, obviously intending to support Ling Han. This wasn't just any ordinary favor. This was practically doting on Ling Han like he was his own son. The third elder of the Spirit Treasures Pavilion, Lord Jiabo Yun, has arrived. Fu Yuansheng had just sat down when another important person ran over. Jiabo Yun's status was not as high as Fu Yuansheng's, but he was still in the spiritual pedestal tier, and was one of the most powerful people in Rain Country. Normally it would be difficult to even meet him, and today he had actually come to attend the wedding. Lu Yutong and Feng Ming did not have this kind of honor, so if Jiabo Yun was not here because of Ling Han, then he was here because of Feng Yan. It was unknown whose side he was standing on. It was at this moment that Feng Yan finally appeared. He had his hands clasped behind his back, and casually sat down on the seat right in the middle. His eyes swept over Ling Han, and a cold smile appeared on his lips, his eyes filled with killing intent. What he was implying was, "I want you to watch as your woman marries another man, and what can you do about it?" Ling Han acted as if he had not seen anything. Now was not the time, so there was no rush. The bride and groom pay their respects to the heavens and earth. The officiant of the wedding called out loudly. A person walked out from each side of the main hall. On the left was a young man dressed in a wedding robe. His looks were obviously not bad, but he had a very sloppy air about him. On the right was a woman who was similarly dressed in a wedding robe. Her head was covered with a red cloth, and there was a servant girl supporting her by her side. She was currently walking over slowly. Anyone with a discerning eye could tell with a glance that the woman in the wedding robe had her cultivation suppressed, and was being forcefully dragged over by the servant girl by her side. "Wait!" Ling Han stood up. It's coming. A good show is about to begin," everyone said in their hearts, all filled with anticipation. Speaking of which, what was so good about attending a wedding? The groom was not even themselves. Most of the people here had come because of the grudge between Ling Han and Feng Yan. "Ling Han, what do you mean by this?" A member of the Lu family asked coldly. "This marriage, I do not agree to it," Ling Han said with a shake of his head. "Haha, who do you think you are? Does the Lu family need your permission to marry off their daughter?" This person said coldly. He was in his 30s, and had the cultivation level of the 7th layer of Gushing Spring tier. Ling Han walked towards Lu Buchang, but saw that Lu Buchang was completely unperturbed, as if he did not know what had happened at all. Ling Han instantly understood that there were actually two voices within the Lu family. One was in favor of marrying Lu Yutong to Feng Ming, while the other did not agree. However, the side that did not agree was obviously at a disadvantage. Thus, Lu Yutong was still married, but under the condition that it did not affect the overall benefits of the Lu family. This side was still willing to open the back door for Ling Han. Thus, Ling Han smoothly entered into the Lu family. Otherwise, he would definitely have to fight his way in. Ling Han strode over and said, "I'll say it again, this marriage, I do not agree to it. Get lost." That member of the Lu family shouted harshly and flew out, throwing a punch at Ling Han. The punch flew over and there was a terrifying shock wave. As a member of the Lu family, his battle prowess was stronger than an ordinary martial artist in the 7th layer of Gushing Spring tier, reaching the level of 8 battle stars. Ling Han raised his hand and casually threw out a punch. Chapter 257. Peng Ling Han's punch passed. He obviously did not use any powerful martial arts technique, but he just happened to catch a sliver of an opening. Under the watchful eyes of the crowd, Ling Han's punch very easily landed on the chest of that member of the Lu clan, directly sending him flying. This punch was a solid hit. That person gave a muffled groan and was directly knocked unconscious. Instantly there was an uproar of surprise. One had to know that that member of the Lu clan was in the 7th layer of Gushing Spring tier, but Ling Han was only in the 1st layer. That was the absolute suppression of an opponent in the late stage of Gushing Spring tier over an opponent in the early stage, so how could he not even be able to block a single punch from Ling Han? The expressions of the eldest and 3rd imperial princes also changed. Ling Han was actually strong to such an extent that even someone in the 7th layer of Gushing Spring tier was defeated in a single move. He was not much weaker than Feng Yan. Not too long ago, Ling Han's cultivation level was completely insignificant to them. It was only because of the connections behind Ling Han that they lowered themselves to befriend him, and Ling Han's own ability was not something they took seriously. But now they really did not dare to believe it. Meanwhile, the 7th imperial prince revealed a smile. The stronger Ling Han was, the happier he was, because he had extended a helping hand when Ling Han was in danger. This friendship was genuine. Some members of the Lu clan looked delighted, but there were also some who looked furious. Obviously, due to their different standpoints, a completely different mentality was born. Ling Han continued to advance, as if he had just sent a minor character flying, completely not worth mentioning. Ling Han, you dare to come to the Lu clan and commit murder. You're quite daring. Another middle-aged man jumped out. There was no longer anyone in the younger generation that could stop Ling Han. This man was about 40 years old, and his cultivation level was in the 9th layer of Gushing Spring tier. He had been stuck at this level for many years, but had also tempered his abilities to an extremely solid level. Ling Han smiled calmly and said, "It's nothing much. I'm only here as a friend." "If that's the case, please conduct yourself with dignity." His name was Lu Zheng, and he had a high chance of breaking through to the spiritual ocean tier. Thus, he was qualified to come into contact with the core secrets of the Lu family. He knew that there were two voices in the family, one supporting Feng Han, and the other supporting Feng Yan. He naturally supported Feng Yan, because the benefits that Feng Yan had promised this time had indeed tempted the Lu family. However, because there were still many people in the clan who supported Ling Han, he did not want to become enemies with Ling Han. Ling Han said, "If Yutong is willing to get married, I will naturally send a generous gift. But if someone forces her as a friend, I will not agree to it." "Aren't you being too nosy?" Lu Zheng snorted. "Seeing that you're doing this for your friend's sake, I'll forgive you. Let Yutong speak. I want to hear what she has to say with my own ears." Ling Han continued to walk forwards. Impudence. Lu Zheng was enraged. He was not only a member of the Lu family, but was also about to enter the core circle of the clan. Who would dare to disobey his words? However, he had spoken nicely to Ling Han, and the latter actually pestered him endlessly. All around them everyone was silent. At this time there was naturally no one who would run out to be a fool. Ling Han strode forwards and brushed past Lu Zheng, not taking him seriously at all. "How dare you?" Lu Zheng's expression changed. He suddenly turned around and stretched out a hand to grab Ling Han's shoulder. Ling Han did not even turn his head. He only stretched out a hand to grab Lu Zheng's wrist, and with a fling shua Lu Zheng was thrown out. Coincidentally, he landed right next to Feng Yan's feet. So powerful, even Lu Zheng was no match for him. How many stars did this guy's battle prowess reach? He was obviously only in the first layer of the gushing spring tier, so why was he so awesome? In the crowd, Yin Tianzhao wore a slight smile on his face. In the depths of his eyes a green light flickered, forming a strange six-pointed star. He stared at Ling Han, and the smile on his lips gradually widened. Feng Yan lowered his head to look at Lu Zheng, who had fallen in front of him, then raised his head again. His expression was calm, and there was not the slightest hint of abnormality. Ling Han, you've gone too far. An old man of about 50 years old walked out, a displeased expression on his face. Lu Ci, spiritual ocean tier. Although his name carried the word Ci in it, he was not the slightest bit merciful, and was known to be ruthless in his actions. Now that Ling Han was invincible in the gushing spring tier, no matter how many gushing spring tier martial artists there were, they would only be seeking their own humiliation. Thus, the spiritual ocean tier martial artists of the Lu family could only shamelessly step forward. Though it was slightly embarrassing to bully the weak, it was still better than being unable to suppress Ling Han and causing a scene in public. Big brother Guang, I'll leave this trash to you, Ling Han said with a smile. Guang Yuan stood up in displeasure and said, this is spiritual ocean tier, not trash. Pei, I'm really unlucky to actually be bewitched by you. As he said these words, he had already leaped out and appeared in front of Lu Ci. Guang Yuan. Lu Ci naturally recognized this Guang Yuan. Spiritual ocean tier martial artists were the true elites of Rain Country. In a place as big as Deyuan City, there was only one spiritual ocean tier martial artist, which showed just how rare they were. What's more, Guang Yuan was an elite martial artist ranked in the top 10 among lone martial artists. Even a great clan like the Lu family would not underestimate him. Guang Yuan laughed and said, Big brother Lu, if you don't make a move, I won't make a move either. How about it? Lu Ci's expression changed drastically. These words sounded very respectful, but one had to understand that this was the Lu family, and today the Lu family was marrying off their daughter. You guys came to make trouble, and he still did not allow him to make a move? What kind of logic was this? Big brother Guang Yuan, could you give me some face and not interfere? Another elite martial artist from the Lu family walked out, smiling as he looked at Guang Yuan. Lu Chuang. Guang Yuan's expression involuntarily tensed up. This person was truly a smiling tiger. On one hand, he would address you as brother and chat happily with you, but on the other hand, he would immediately turn hostile and attack you. Moreover, his cultivation level was in the 6th layer of the spiritual ocean tier, which was even higher than his own. I'll also join in the fun. A tall and thin old man stood out. His head was completely bald, and his eyes were very small, but they shone with a shocking cold light. Lu Zhongtian, where not even a blade of grass grows. This time it was Lu Chuang's turn to tense up. Lu Zhongtian was also a lone martial artist, and his seniority was one generation higher than Guang Yuan's. This nickname of where not even a blade of grass grows was used to describe his baldness, and also because he was ruthless in his actions, not leaving anyone alive. This person had already disappeared 5 years ago, and most people thought that he was already dead. But the Lu family knew that Lu Zhongtian had been recruited by the imperial family. Now that this person had appeared here, and was obviously standing on Ling Han's side, could it be that the imperial family was expressing some sort of stance? Even the eldest and third imperial princes were shocked. They naturally knew Lu Zhongtian's identity. He was one of the few elite martial artists that the imperial family had recruited. They had also recruited 2 of them, and Lu Zhongtian was one of the 7th imperial prince's men. 7th brother and Ling Han were on the same side. But in this battle, no matter what, Ling Han would not be able to gain the upper hand. How could 7th brother make such a mistake? He clearly knew that he would definitely lose, but he still supported Ling Han. One had to know that Ling Han had the Winter Moon sect behind him, and which party in Rain Country could stand against him. Damn it, 7th brother was definitely not that kind of idiot. Chapter 258. There were also people from the other 7 great clans that came to attend the wedding of the Liu family. Although the powerful figures of the spiritual pedestal tier would definitely not come personally due to their status, there were quite a number of spiritual ocean tier martial artists that came, so they were naturally qualified to know Liu Zhongtian's identity. The royal family has appeared. Interesting. Brother Zhongtian and I are old partners. Since Brother Zhongtian wants to interfere, how can this old man just sit back and watch? Another old man smiled as he stepped forward. Xie Chang. Do I really have to thank Senior? His Senior Xie is a genius of the way of the saber. Back then, he was known as the Overlord Saber, and was in Huyang University at the same time as His Imperial Majesty, the Rain Emperor. His Imperial Majesty, the Rain Emperor, called him the strongest saber user in the last 200 years. He's the head of the palace guards and has always been guarding the palace. I didn't expect him to show up. Everyone cried out in surprise. Xie Chang's status was much higher than Liu Zhongtian's. Not only was his cultivation level higher, his battle prowess stronger, he was also the leader of the Imperial Guards. To a large extent, he represented the Imperial family. The hearts of the eldest Imperial Prince and the third Imperial Prince immediately tightened. Liu Zhongtian's appearance only represented the 7th Imperial Prince's personal support for Ling Han, but Xie Chang was different. Xie Chang was deeply respected by the Rain Emperor, and as the leader of the Imperial Guards, he was only loyal to the Rain Emperor. But now Xie Chang was standing on Ling Han's side. Didn't that mean that the Rain Emperor was also supporting Ling Han? When they thought of how they had chosen to stand by and do nothing, while the 7th Imperial Prince had supported Ling Han, and now the Rain Emperor seemed to have also made his choice, how could they not pale with fright? Lu Chuang's and Lu Xi's expressions changed drastically. Xie Chang could be said to be the Rain Emperor's spokesperson. Many a time it was Xie Chang who ran to the various great clans to deliver the Rain Emperor's decree, and his exposure rate was even higher than the Rain Emperor's. His appearance definitely did not represent himself. Though Ling Han did not recognize Xie Chang, he should have guessed the latter's identity from the discussions of the people around him. He could not help but nod internally. This was the Rain Emperor expressing his displeasure towards the Winter Moon sect, and also a warning. Rain Country naturally did not have the right to oppose the Winter Moon sect, but Feng Yan was only a small disciple. His behavior was too arrogant, and had incurred the displeasure of the Rain Emperor. Xie Chang's appearance was a warning to the Liu family, telling them not to forget their own status. The grudge between Feng Yan and Ling Han was only limited to the two of them. Others should not join in the fun. It was naturally impossible for the Liu family to not understand the hidden meaning of the Rain Emperor's words. Thus, after Lu Xi and Lu Chuang exchanged a look, they both retreated, and those members of the Liu family who had initially wanted to step forward also sat down. Xie Chang, Liu Zhongtian and Guang Yuan looked at each other and smiled, then turned around and returned to their original positions. This was definitely an unexpected turn of events. Previously, Feng Yan and Ling Han had caused such a huge ruckus, yet the Imperial family did not make any move. At first, they had thought that this time would not be an exception, but they had never thought that the Rain Emperor would suddenly make a move, which was something that no one had expected. Previously, the Imperial family did not make any move because it was merely a personal grudge between Ling Han and Feng Yan. But now that the Liu family has been dragged into this as well, the meaning has changed. How could the Rain Emperor allow outsiders to interfere in the affairs of the nation and shake the foundation of the nation? Everyone nodded. The Liu family was one of the 8 great clans, and was the pillar of the empire. Now they were openly siding with Feng Yan and the Winter Moon sect. Did they still have any respect for the Imperial family? Were they trying to rebel? It was not that the Rain Emperor was more biased towards Ling Han, but rather that Feng Yan or the Liu family had crossed the line and broken the Rain Emperor's bottom line. There were already 2 voices within the Liu family in the first place, and now that the Rain Emperor's attitude was very clear, naturally no one dared to interfere. Whether or not they could stop Ling Han would depend on Feng Yan. In the end, this was still a personal grudge between Ling Han and Feng Yan. After Ling Han took a few more steps, he had already arrived in front of the 2 newlyweds. Ling Han, I welcome you to attend my wedding, but I do not wish to hear anything else. Feng Ming opened his mouth and said. He obviously looked like a hooligan, yet his words were of a very high standard, causing everyone to be taken aback. Obviously, this was taught by Feng Yan, but what he said next caused everyone to frown. Ling Han, I heard that you had a very close relationship with Yutong in the past. You couldn't have made me a cuckold, right? Pooh. Quite a few people immediately spluttered. How could he ask such a question to his face? Didn't he feel embarrassed? Idiot, this guy was indeed an idiot. He was used by Feng Yan to disgust Ling Han. Anyone who heard their own woman being humiliated like this would probably turn green in anger, right? Even the members of the Lu family had ugly expressions. Lu Yutong was the proud daughter of the Lu family, and now that she was humiliated, how could the Lu family feel good about it? Hurry up and get married. Such a beautiful woman, I already can't help but want to enter the bridal room, Feng Ming said lecherously. He had only seen Lu Yutong once, and he had been completely infatuated with her. Even in his dreams, he had never thought that he would actually be able to marry such an exquisite beauty. Everyone shook their heads. They did not know what benefits the Lu family had obtained from this marriage, but with Feng Ming's actions, the Lu family's face would also be completely lost. As expected, the expressions of all the members of the Lu family were livid. They had not thought that Feng Ming would actually be so vulgar. Only Feng Yan had a smile on his face. He did not look for anyone else, but he had looked for Feng Ming. Wasn't it because he had fallen for Feng Ming's vulgar hooliganism? The more lowly Feng Ming was, the more he could humiliate Ling Han. He was only at this level, yet he was fighting over a woman with such a small character. What are you still standing there for? Hurry up and get married. No, I've already held it in for a long time, Feng Ming urged. Pa! Ling Han moved, and his fist landed on Feng Ming's head. With a crack, the sound of bones breaking rang out, and Feng Ming's entire head was forcefully smashed into his chest. His body swayed a few times, and with a thud, he collapsed onto the ground. Only then did fresh blood flow out. Great, a happy occasion had become a funeral. Seeing this scene, many people wanted to clap and cheer. It was really because Feng Ming was too lowly, and he had dragged down their statuses as well. Now that he had been slapped to death by Ling Han, they all felt a sense of satisfaction, as if a fly had finally died. Only the expressions of the members of the Lu family were even uglier. No matter what, Feng Ming was the son-in-law of the Lu family, but he had been slapped to death by an outsider in the Lu family. This was equivalent to slapping their faces. Ling Han, you're getting more and more daring. Feng Yan finally stood up. With his hands behind his back, he walked towards Ling Han. Feng Ming was dead, and he naturally did not take it to heart at all. In any case, he had never cared about this cousin of his, and the Feng family did not need this kind of trash. He had only wanted to use Feng Ming to humiliate Ling Han, but he did not think that Ling Han would be so decisive, directly slapping Feng Ming to death. So what? Ling Han said tit for tat. There had long been no possibility of reconciliation between him and Feng Yan. Feng Yan was not angered, and instead said to the members of the Lu family, "Why are you stopping? Didn't you hear what the groom said just now? Hurry up and get married." Wasn't Feng Ming already slapped to death? How were they going to get married? Feng Yan could not possibly want Lu Yutong to marry a dead man, right? Too vicious. No wonder Feng Yan was so calm. His goal was only to humiliate Ling Han, and marrying a dead man was not much better than marrying a piece of trash. Chapter 259. Ling Han had the absolute initiative. He still hadn't activated the Eye of Truth, or else Ao Jiancheng's weakness would be infinitely magnified in front of his eyes. As long as the difference in battle prowess between the two sides wasn't large, it would definitely be fatal, allowing him to win in a few moves. This was a mystical power after all. Impossible! Ao Jiancheng roared angrily. Now he was close to his full battle prowess, but not only could he not suppress Ling Han, he even had the upper hand, which he couldn't accept. Ling Han smiled faintly and said, "Nothing's impossible, just obediently let me slap your face. Don't even think about it." Ao Jiancheng was very conceited. Being ranked last among the 7 sons of Ao family was only a temporary forbearance, and sooner or later, he would soar to the skies. Now he hadn't even taken off yet, and already suffered a head-on heavy blow that made him dizzy. He actually couldn't beat someone in the first layer of the spiritual ocean tier? This was something he couldn't believe and couldn't accept. Ah! He roared angrily, took out a spirit talisman and slapped it on his chest. Instantly, surging origin power overflowed like the sea, and his power abruptly increased. His battle prowess instantly soared by 2 stars. This allowed him to directly suppress Ling Han, seizing the initiative of the battle. The spirit talisman he used was the Minor Devil Sky Talisman, which could temporarily increase power, and the effect lasted for about 10 minutes. Thus, he definitely had to defeat Ling Han within this period of time. Otherwise, this precious spiritual talisman would be wasted. No way, old AO 7th was actually forced to use a spirit talisman. I really can't believe it. How could someone in the first layer of the spiritual ocean tier be so strong? I heard that there's a genius in the desolate north called Ling Han, who defeated Feng Yan, who was in the first layer of the spiritual ocean tier, when he was in the first layer of the gushing spring tier. I always thought that this couldn't happen, but looking at the situation now, I kind of believe it. It's too shocking. How could someone in the first layer of the spiritual ocean tier have such terrifying battle prowess? How many stars did this guy's battle prowess surpass? The people in the surroundings all shuddered in fear. It was too hard for them to accept. How could someone be so strong? Even the old man in the spiritual pedestal tier frowned. This time he really picked up a treasure. Such a genius could probably be ranked among the top in the middle state. Lose, 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 lose. Ao Jiancheng shouted. If he still couldn't win against Ling Han after using the spirit talisman, then he'd really be disgraced. Ling Han only snorted coldly and said, "Don't daydream." He finally activated the Eye of Truth, and faint golden patterns flashed across his right eye. Ao Jiancheng's every move was infinitely slowed down in his eyes. Here, and here they were all flaws. Ling Han was shocked. With his heaven-tier vision, he only found 7 flaws in Ao Jiancheng, but considering the power and attack speed of both sides, none of these 7 flaws could be used. If he chose these 7 spots to attack, then the result would be that both sides would be injured. He had the indestructible heaven scroll, so he could definitely hold on more than Ao Jiancheng, but he refused this kind of victory. This was Ao Feng's son, so he had to win to his heart's content. And under the Eye of Truth, Ao Jiancheng's flaws were magnified by 19. He immediately began to calculate in his mind, simulating the possible results of attacking every flaw, and in just an instant, he came up with an answer. His figure suddenly advanced, charging towards Ao Jiancheng. What? Impossible. Are my eyes playing tricks on me? In everyone's cries of surprise, Ling Han directly avoided all of Ao Jiancheng's attacks. His figure continuously swayed, as if he had become a paper man. The seemingly inconceivable and completely unreasonable action became a perfect dodge, allowing him to bully right in front of Ao Jiancheng. Pa! Ling Han raised his hand and gave a slap, landing solidly on Ao Jiancheng's face. It was clear and loud. Ao Jiancheng's eyes instantly turned red, and he shouted angrily, "I'm going to kill you." He was extremely furious. As one of the 7 sons of Ao family, he was actually slapped in the face in public. What kind of humiliation was this? He attacked wildly. However, in front of Ling Han, who activated the Eye of Truth, what meaning was there to such a counterattack? The two's strength wasn't much different, and the effect of the Eye of Truth was extremely shocking. Pa pa pa! Ling Han continuously waved his palms, and Ao Jiancheng was also continuously slapped in the face, his teeth spitting out one after another. However, he actually couldn't do anything and could only roar in vain. The attacks he launched were tyrannical but couldn't hit anyone at all, so what meaning was there? Enough! That spiritual pedestal tier elite didn't continue. This wasn't called a battle at all, but a one-sided massacre. It didn't matter to others, but Ao Jiancheng was Ao Feng's son, and he couldn't just watch as Ao Jiancheng was humiliated. Otherwise, Ao Feng would definitely find trouble with him. Ao Feng was an existence that could at least cross into the flower blossom tier in the future, and he didn't want to be hated by Ao Jiancheng. Pa 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 pa! Ling Han consecutively slapped 4 more times, knocking all of Ao Jiancheng's teeth out. Only then did he stop and retreat. Ah! How could Ao Jiancheng swallow this insult? He leaped and pounced towards Ling Han. "My lord already said to stop and you still want to fight." Are you not putting milord in your eyes? Ling Han deliberately sounded arrogant. Too despicable, too vulgar, too sinister. The spiritual pedestal tier warrior's face was a bit dark. He was displeased with both Ao Jianchong and Ling Han. These two guys didn't take him seriously. However, one was Ao Feng's son, and the other had freakish battle prowess, his future accomplishments limitless. It seemed like he couldn't do anything to either of them. This obviously made him very depressed. Enough, he said coldly. In this battle, old Ao loses, Han Lin wins. Yu Kaiyu touched his face and said, compared to old Ao, I only lost 3 teeth, which can be considered preferential treatment. What kind of medicine did this guy eat to be so fierce? The other battles also ended one after another, and the other 6 members of the Ao family all won, but the expressions of the 6 people were quite unsightly. How the Ao family competed internally was something that happened behind closed doors, but to the outside world they were all members of the Ao family. Now that old Ao was publicly slapped in the face, and even lost a mouthful of teeth, how could they not be furious? This brat actually dared to publicly humiliate a member of our Ao family. Absolutely unforgivable, Ao Jian said coldly. However, he could defeat old Ao so easily. I'm afraid that aside from boss, no one else is his match. The key is that this guy is only in the first layer of the spiritual ocean tier. No matter what kind of spirit tool, spirit talisman, or medicinal pill he used to have such battle prowess, it's still shockingly terrifying. The 6 sons of the Ao family frowned at the same time, and a strong sense of danger arose. Chapter 260. Thankfully, Feng Yan's saber was only of common grade. Otherwise, as long as it reached the level of a level 1 spirit tool, it would not need to be branded with any martial art intent. Merely its sharpness would be enough to cut Ling Han's sword in half. Great Sun Mad Saber shatter! Feng Yan shouted loudly and charged with the saber. Saber light flashed, creating waves after waves, its might extremely terrifying. Such strong saber intent! Xiechong exclaimed. At this time, the spiritual infant tier decree had already been put away, and everyone naturally climbed up from the ground to watch the battle between these 2 young prodigies. However, some people's gazes swept over Hu Niu and Yen Tianzhao, because these 2 people were actually able to resist the spiritual infant tier aura emanating from the decree, which was truly shocking and unexpected. Xiechong was known as the Overlord Saber, and his attainments in saber arts could be considered one of the best in Rain Country. Even he had to exclaim in surprise, so it was clear that Feng Yan's saber arts were indeed extraordinary. And many people nodded one after another. Whether they liked Feng Yan as a person or not was one thing, but if they were to look at the matter as it stood, Feng Yan's attainments in saber techniques were indeed extraordinary. Otherwise, how could the 3rd Imperial Prince, Zhao Huan, and Ken Yi have been so easily defeated by him? Ling Han was also slightly surprised. The might of this saber had reached the level of a black-grade high-level martial arts technique. The Feng clan could not produce a black-grade martial arts technique at all. In the whole of Rain Country, probably only the imperial family possessed a black-grade high-level martial arts technique. Feng Yan naturally could not have obtained such a secret technique from the imperial family, so he must have been taught it when he went to the Winter Moon sect. Not bad, not bad. No wonder he could gain the favor of a powerful warrior of spiritual infant tier. Feng Yan had probably only cultivated this saber art for about a month, yet he had already practiced it to a very familiar level, and had at least grasped 20 to 30% of its essence. It could be seen that his talent in martial art was indeed extraordinary, but it was only extraordinary. Ling Han gave a long shout and brandished his sword. The 4-season sword technique was activated, and he charged towards Feng Yan. This set of sword technique was passed on to Lu Yutong by him. It was also a martial technique that he had used in his previous life. There was no need to practice at all. With just a thought, it would naturally and smoothly circulate. It was a hazy drizzle, like the continuous spring rain. This drizzle was formed from Ling Han's elemental energy. As long as it stuck to his body, the elemental energy would enter his body and cause terrifying damage. Good sword. When it came to Ling Han's sword, many people also praised it. In the world of martial art, the sword and the saber were the 2 most commonly used weapons. Feng Yan's saber techniques had attracted the admiration of saber users, while Ling Han's sword techniques had obtained the praise of swordsmen. This young man's sword intent is not inferior to Feng Yan's. That's right. Honestly speaking, if I suppress my cultivation level to gushing spring tier, I might not be able to unleash such a strong sword technique. Strange, why do I have a feeling that this sword isn't done yet and that it's still holding back? You think so too? Feng Yan let out a long howl, and had already swung his saber. Ding! A crisp sound rang out, creating a ripple of sound that spread out in all directions. All the martial artists below gushing spring tier all bled from their ears, nose and eyes, looking extremely wretched. Even for those in gushing spring tier, there were still many who involuntarily covered their ears. Ling Han and Feng Yan were both forced back. In this exchange they were evenly matched and it was difficult to determine who was stronger. I've underestimated you a little. Feng Yan humped coldly. He swung his saber in a circle, creating a piercingly cold flash of saber light that surged like a waterfall. Saber roll 30,000 feet, slaying all enemies in the world. Xie Chang's hand trembled, and he could not help but touch the hilt of his saber. His eyes shone with fighting spirit. This kind of saber intent made him itch to fight, and he could not help but want to battle. That strike just now was actually not his full power. Heavens, he's already so strong. And he can still improve further. This is too terrifying. This time Ling Han can only retreat, right? In the midst of everyone's exclamations of shock, Ling Han's sword swept out, and the spring rain appeared again. But in an instant, the concept of the sword technique changed, from the endless spring rain to the sudden clap of thunder in summer. Hong long long, the sound of thunder did not stop, and it was deafening. What? Everyone was stunned. Consecutive sword strikes. How is this possible? The first strike has not even finished, and he can already unleash a new strike. And this sword intent changes so naturally, as if it makes one feel as if spring has come to summer, complying with the laws of nature. No wonder that strike just now gave me the feeling that it had not been fully unleashed. So the sword intent is continuous, and it has not been used up at all. This is too terrifying. How does this guy cultivate? But that was it. Ling Han's sword intent changed again, and the autumn wind blew. It was slightly bleak, and filled with killing intent. Then, with another turn, it became winter. Endless white snow fluttered in the air, causing everyone to involuntarily wrap their arms around themselves, feeling a chill. One strike for types of sword intent. Oh my god, this is too freakish. How is this possible? Everyone was dumbfounded. This was completely beyond the scope of their understanding. Such a sword technique should not have appeared in the mortal world at all. Ling Han revealed a faint smile. The four-season sword technique as one was already close to an earth-grade martial technique's power. If he did not have a trace of the divine sense of the heaven tier, he would not have been able to transform the sword technique so smoothly. And once there was a delay, then there would be a gap in the four seasons, and the power would not be as good as the first season sword technique. Spring rain, summer thunder, autumn wind, winter snow. Ling Han rode on the four types of sword intent and attacked Feng Yan mightily. Feng Yan's expression changed drastically. If Ling Han had only used the first season sword technique, he would have been completely unafraid, and he could even use the tyranny of his blade technique to suppress it. But the four-season sword technique as one, it formed an effect that was greater than 1 + 1. This was a sword formation equivalent to 4 people working together. No matter how strong he was, could he fight against 4 Ling Hans at the same time? He roared angrily, and the long saber sank downwards, stopping its forward momentum. His right foot suddenly stomped on the ground, forcing his body to retreat. Hong, the sword shadows surged but missed, only slicing the nearby tables and chairs into pieces that danced in the air. Hoo, Feng Yan panted heavily. He had forcefully stopped his attack just now, which was equivalent to hitting himself, and it was extremely uncomfortable. He hurriedly swallowed a medicinal pill, his gaze fixed on Ling Han, revealing a strong expression of wariness. He could tell that one strike from Ling Han contained 4 sets of sword techniques and 4 types of sword intent. If it was just any one of them, he would not be the slightest bit afraid. But the combined might of the 4 seasons was too great, and even he did not dare to take it head-on. Damn. Originally, he could have crushed Ling Han to death with a raise of his hand, but at that time, he had not obtained the approval of the Winter Moon sect, so he was slightly cautious in his actions, and wanted to take Ling Han's life 3 months later. He did not think that a momentary slip would actually cause his younger brother to die at the hands of Ling Han, and now he even had the ability to stand against him. This brat had grown too quickly, hadn't he? Kill him, he had to kill him. Feng Yan once again drew out the decree, and with a schwa he unfurled it. A powerful pressure swept over and everyone once again knelt on the ground or sat on the ground, all of them lowering themselves. Die! Feng Yan used the decree as a whip, and lashed it at Ling Han. There were multiple characters flashing on the front, and it was indescribably awe-inspiring. Chapter 261. Ling Han was not afraid of the might of a spiritual infant tier elite, but if he was struck by the will of a spiritual infant tier martial art, it would be equivalent to smashing an egg against a rock. He would only be smashed to pieces. Thus, when the decree swept towards him, he could only retreat. Run, where can you run to? Feng Yan smirked coldly, waving the decree as he chased after him. As he danced, the might of a spiritual infant tier elite became more and more terrifying. Even a spiritual pedestal tier elite was sweating profusely, not to mention the others, who had long since become soft mud. Ling Han's figure dashed as he pondered for a countermeasure. If he drew out the demon birth sword, even if he could not activate the will of a martial art on the sword, he would be able to block the will of a spiritual infant tier martial art with mere level 10 forging materials. More importantly, if he used it in public, how much attention would he attract? If he was all alone, then it didn't matter. At worst, he could just run and continue to mingle in another place. But now, his roots were in Rain Country into Yuan City in Grey Cloud Town. He could leave, but what about Ling Dongxing and what about his other relatives? The Ling family had already suffered a great calamity, and how could Ling Han bear to bring another calamity to the Ling family because of him? No, the demon birth sword definitely could not be used. Under the decree of a spiritual infant tier elite. How long do you plan to run? Feng Yan laughed loudly. His master had given him a decree, so he would have no fear even if he were to face the current Rain Emperor. What more, a mere gushing spring tier? Obediently accept your death. Don't even think about getting lucky. Ling Han used Shadow Wind Movement Technique, which was also a black-grade high-level martial arts technique. Since he had broken through to Gushing Spring tier, the yellow-grade martial arts technique from before was naturally discarded, and switched for a higher-level black-grade martial arts technique. Feng Yan could not catch up. He had been taught a black-grade high-level saber technique, and he hadn't been able to fully grasp it even after more than a month, so where would he have the time to learn other martial arts techniques? Ling Han was different. He had used all of these in his previous life, and even if he hadn't, with his comprehension of martial art at the heaven tier, it would still be easy for him to learn them. Don't run. Feng Yan was furious, but there was nothing he could do to Ling Han. The other was as nimble as a loach, incredibly slippery, and he could not hit him at all. However, Ling Han smiled faintly and said, "Once the decree is activated, the will of martial art within it will dissipate. Now that you're activating it like this, you're speeding up the speed of its dissipation. How long can you last?" When it came to understanding the secrets of martial art, who could compare to him, a former celestial being? How did you know? As expected, Feng Yan was greatly shocked. This was also what his master had told him. Dermic decrees could not be compared to spirit tools. They were only slightly more durable than spirit talismans, but there was still a limit. You don't have to worry about that. Ling Han's sword danced and he shot out a few flashes of sword chi. Only defending and not attacking was not his style. Feng Yan did not use his saber either. He waved the decree, and the will of martial art within it was enough to destroy the sword chi. However, he was getting more and more anxious in his heart. If this went on, he would really exhaust the decree until it became a piece of scrap paper. He was an extremely arrogant person in the first place, and a fierce light immediately appeared in his eyes. With a twist of his body, the decree slapped onto the head of a person. The will of martial art swept over, and that person's head instantly exploded. That pitiful person had already been suppressed by the might of a spiritual infant tier warrior, and could only lie on the ground trembling. There was no way for him to dodge. and he could only watch helplessly as misfortune befell him. Feng Yan! Everyone roared in fury. What was this guy planning to do? Ling Han, if you dare to dodge again, I will kill everyone here, Feng Yan said coldly, his killing intent boiling. When these words were spoken, everyone was both shocked and enraged. Those who could attend the wedding today were all people with status in the imperial city, and there were even a few spiritual pedestal tier elites among them. Yet Feng Yan actually dared to use their lives as a threat? This was practically demented. Feng Yan, you've gone too far, a great many people shouted fiercely. This is between you and Ling Han. What does it have to do with us? Don't make us look down on you. Yet Feng Yan acted as if he had not heard them, and said coldly, a bunch of trash, so what if I kill all of them? Who can do anything to me? If I use my full strength, it's not that I cannot kill Ling Han, but that it would force me to reveal my trump card. This is not what I want. Since I can use an easier method to kill him, why should I waste so much effort? Everyone became even more furious, and began to scold him one after another. However, there was one thing that Feng Yan had not said wrongly. He could act recklessly and kill whenever he wanted to, but no one dared to do anything to him, because Feng Yan was a disciple of the Winter Moon sect. Whoever dared to touch a disciple of the Winter Moon sect at most, they would be expelled from Rain Country. Ling Han, why don't you just obediently accept your death? Could it be that you want so many people to die with you? Feng Yan laughed loudly, his expression arrogant, as if he was a cat toying with a mouse. As the decree danced in the air, another dozen or so people were smashed into pieces by him. This guy indeed still had trump cards, such as the mirror light body. He had not used it, and this also allowed Ling Han to confirm that this kind of physique was activated on its own. A physique that was activated on its own would definitely need to expend physical strength, origin power, or soul power, and there would be a limit to this, and it could not be maintained forever. On the other hand, Ling Han's body of rock cliff was passive, and did not need to be activated for it to have an effect. However, even if it was actively activated, it would not be able to increase the strength of his physique. Furthermore, Ling Han believed that Feng Yan should have some other secret. Otherwise, he would not have been able to fight to a draw with the eldest imperial prince, and would not have been able to be taken in as a disciple by the spiritual infant tier. Don't make me underestimate you. Ling Han only said this. He naturally would not wait for death. Underestimate me. Feng Yan laughed loudly and proudly said, what right do you have to underestimate me? You do know that I am. For now let's keep this a secret. You want to die a heroic death in battle? Impossible. I just want you to die a useless death. His thoughts changed and he said, everyone, if you want to live that's fine, but you have to do something for me. Capture Ling Han. I'll give you the time of 3 breaths, and if Ling Han has not knelt in front of me by then, I will have no choice but to draw out my decree and kill all of you. So vicious. Don't doubt my determination. Don't you forget my identity. He said coldly. Everyone's hearts trembled. Feng Yan was not a normal disciple of the Winter Moon sect, but rather the personal disciple of a grand elder. Previously, he had openly opposed the eldest imperial prince, and now, he was even brazenly killing people without the slightest scruple. Feng Yan could do whatever he wanted, but who could do anything to him? Thinking this way, Feng Yan's threat was like a knife pressed against their necks, causing them to tremble in fear. Ling Han did not say anything, and was only looking for a chance. I've given you a chance. If you want to live, then grab hold of it. Feng Yan said with a smile as he put away the decree. Toying with everyone in the palm of his hand, this feeling of being high above made him feel very good. It was at this moment that Ling Han shot out like a sharp arrow, and instantly appeared in front of Feng Yan. Taking advantage of the gap when Feng Yan put away the decree, he moved as fast as lightning, and his long sword struck onto Feng Yan's wrist. Pa! The decree instantly flew out of his hand. Chapter 262. Shua! The decree streaked through the air, and a golden light surged. Ling Han and Feng Yan both leapt up and chased after the decree. Now, whoever could obtain the decree was equivalent to controlling the life and death of everyone present. Pong, 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 the two of them continuously exchanged blows in midair. But it was still Ling Han who had the upper hand and managed to get ahead. Ling Han stretched out his hand, and the tip of his finger was about to touch the decree. He suddenly paused and raised his left hand. The blood-sucking origin gold turned into a golden thread and wrapped around the decree. With another fling, this decree was flung far away by him. The decree floated down lightly. Someone at the side was envious and instantly tried to snatch it. Who would have thought that the moment his hand touched it, with a paw, his entire arm would be shaken into flesh and blood, instantly causing him to scream in pain. Hung! Feng Yan stopped and said coldly, "You sure are careful." Previously, he was indeed caught off guard by Ling Han, but in the subsequent struggle, he was actually not at a disadvantage. However, he purposely held back, wanting Ling Han to grab the decree and take the opportunity to shatter Ling Han's arm. He never thought that Ling Han would be so cautious. Ling Han was not being cautious, but he was a powerful warrior of Heaven Tier in his last life, so how could he not know about the taboo of a decree? He purposely pretended not to know, and instead used Feng Yan's intention to harm others to successfully send the decree flying. Now that Feng Yan no longer had the decree as a threat, the others naturally did not have to listen to his orders. One-on-one, Ling Han was unafraid. Feng Yan. Everyone gritted their teeth. A mere martial artist from a poor family actually dared to threaten them with his life, causing them to hate him so much that they wanted to devour his flesh and blood. Don't be unconvinced, Feng Yan said proudly and swept his gaze around. You trash only know how to vent your anger with words. Do you dare to attack me? You! Quite a number of people roared loudly with bloodshot eyes. The relatives of those who had been beaten to death by Feng Yan previously were so enraged that their bodies were trembling, but the Winter Moon sect was like a giant beast pressing down on their heads. Who would dare to make a move against Feng Yan when they clearly knew that he was a disciple of the Winter Moon sect? I don't want you, you bunch of trash. Feng Yan laughed coldly, and no longer paid attention to the others. He said to Ling Han, although I will definitely kill you, I cannot help but admit that you are at least much braver than those pieces of trash, to dare to oppose me. Ling Han brandished his sword and said, You talk too much nonsense. Just wash your neck and prepare to die. You really dare to kill me? Feng Yan said with a smile. Are you not afraid of the Winter Moon sect? So what? Ling Han asked calmly. He really did not take the Winter Moon sect to heart. No matter how Feng Yan thought about it, it was impossible for him to know that Ling Han had once been an elite of the Heaven Tier. Now, his cultivation level had fallen, but how could his pride and vision have fallen? In the future, he would definitely be able to return to the Heaven Tier, and it would not take too long. Moreover, the Winter Moon sect still had Ao Feng, who he definitely had to get rid of. It was destined that he would have to confront the Winter Moon sect head-on. In comparison, Feng Yan could only be considered a minor character. Ah, you have guts. This kind of person is only satisfying to kill. Feng Yan laughed loudly, pointed at Ling Han and said, If you had not killed my younger brother, I really would not want to get rid of you so quickly. Dream on. Ling Han attacked. His sword swept past, and 6 flashes of sword chi danced in unison. You think I really have to be afraid of you? Feng Yan shouted loudly. A weak silver light flickered on his body, and he slashed with his long saber, with a domineering aura that could not be turned back. Good saber. Xiechong could not help but exclaim. You're still cheering for this brat? Lu Zhongtian rolled his eyes. This guy had almost killed all of them just now. That's a different matter. This brat's saber technique is indeed not bad. If it was not for Sai, even I would somewhat want to take him as a disciple. Xiechong shook his head and sighed, appearing to be very regretful. Ding 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 ding, Ling Han and Feng Yan continued to exchange blows. Saber chi and sword chi danced chaotically, and it was extremely intense. At this moment, Feng Yan had already activated Mirror Light Body, which could reflect about 20% of Ling Han's attacks. This was quite shocking. Not only did it weaken 20% of Ling Han's attack power, it also returned these attacks to Ling Han, strengthening his attacks. When he was receiving the attacks, Feng Yan's body also flickered with a silver light, as if a mirror was about to shatter. Obviously, there was a limit to the attacks that he could reflect. As long as this limit was exceeded, then he would not be able to reflect the attacks. and would instead be directly crushed into pieces. Ling Han's body of rock cliff came into play. He could practically withstand the 20% of the attacks that were reflected back at him, and only felt slightly uncomfortable. However, with just a circulation of the indestructible heaven scroll, this feeling of discomfort completely disappeared. Their right hands danced with sabers and swords, while their left hands continuously formed fists and palms. Even their legs would occasionally kick at each other, sending out one shocking burst of chi after another. The power was extremely shocking. This caused everyone in the surroundings to be speechless. Who in the current younger generation could compete with the two of them? Too strong. Feng Yan was a bit hesitant. This was not a display of his full strength, but if he wanted to kill Ling Han, he would have to use more and stronger trump cards. For the sake of a single Ling Han, was it worth exposing them? Moreover, Ling Han should also have a trump card that he had yet to reveal. At least he had not used the sword technique that contained 4 consecutive concepts previously, so he had no choice but to hold something back in case of an attack. "I'm not late, am I?" It was at this moment that a bright laugh was heard, and a tall and slender old man walked over with large strides. With every step he took, light would shine under his feet, and a purple circle of light would actually appear, as if a flower had bloomed. This was the intent of martial art, and could only be formed by those in the spiritual ocean tier or at least, and this person had already reached the spiritual pedestal tier. Who were these words directed at? Feng Yan laughed brightly and said, "Attendant Qiu, you've come at the right time. Let me introduce myself. I am Qiu Ku, a small attendant of the Winter Moon sect," the old man said with a smile, looking like he was amiable. Yet everyone's hearts suddenly skipped a beat. An attendant of the Winter Moon sect? If Feng Yan was only a disciple, then Qiu Ku could represent the Winter Moon sect's intent to a certain extent. "Attendant Qiu, capture this boy for me," Feng Yan continued. "Sure." Qiu Ku nodded without hesitation, and did not put on any airs just because Feng Yan's cultivation level was far inferior to his. This was naturally because of the spiritual infant tier elite behind Feng Yan. "I dare." Fu Yuansheng immediately stepped forward. Qiu Ku's gaze swept over, and his eyes narrowed slightly as he said, "Black-grade high-level alchemist. Let the young deal with their affairs. The older generation can just stand by the side," Fu Yuansheng said calmly, but there was a domineering air that could not be refused. As a member of the Alchemist Society, he was not afraid of the Winter Moon sect. Qiu Ku revealed a hesitant expression. Firstly, he was not willing to offend a high-level alchemist, and secondly, Fu Yuansheng was also in the spiritual pedestal tier, so even if he attacked, he might not be able to kill Ling Han. Feng Yan smiled coldly and said, "Patriarch of the Lu clan, this person killed the son-in-law of the Lu clan. Could it be that the Lu clan is going to let him get away scot-free? I will not make things difficult for you. As long as you block Master Fu, the benefits that I promised the Lu clan will not be reduced in the slightest." Oh. Chapter 263. Everyone exclaimed in shock. The 7 sons of Ao family could be said to have an outstanding reputation, and the Winter Moon sect had placed high hopes on them. In the entire history of the sect, it was very rare for all 7 brothers to be ranked so highly at the same time. But among the 7 of them, 5 had been defeated, and 1 had admitted defeat himself. If even Ao Xinglai was no match for Ling Han, then the 7 sons of Ao family would become a joke. Defeated by the same person in a single day, Ling Han and Ao Xinglai both took a few steps back. One had a hand covering his ribs, while the other had a hand pressed against his face. Lone Wolf's blood circulated, and Ling Han once again charged out. At the same time, he circulated the indestructible Heaven's Scroll to heal his injuries. He wanted to defeat Ao Xinglai in a single blow. As his cultivation level increased, the additional effect of Lone Wolf's blood on his battle prowess also became weaker and weaker. Now it could barely increase his battle prowess by 1 battle star. But no matter how small a mosquito's leg was, it was still meat, so any increase was still a little. Ao Xinglai's face was filled with shock. He had laid in ambush and struck Ling Han when he was caught off guard. But he had actually only managed to severely wound his opponent. No, that couldn't even be considered a severe wound. It was only a slightly more serious injury. and Ling Han's counterattack had also given him a heavy punch, shattering 2 of his teeth. But there was no time for him to be shocked now. Ling Han's fist was flying towards him again, and he could only react. He brandished his sword, and suddenly 7 flashes of sword chi shot out. Since he had already revealed his trump card, there was no need for him to hide it anymore. With the additional effect of the Black Star Sword, the 7 flashes of sword chi were astonishingly sharp. Ling Han did his best, and with the help of the Eye of Truth, he managed to dodge 6 flashes of sword chi. However, he still did not manage to completely dodge the 7th flash of sword chi, which landed another slash on his leg. Yet Ling Han acted as if he had not felt it at all. Pang, a punch shot out and landed on Ao Xinglai's face. This was completely an exchange of injury for injury. In everyone's eyes, how sharp was the Black Star Sword? Furthermore, it was a level 5 spirit tool, and the martial intent contained within it could completely crush any cultivator in the spiritual ocean tier. No matter how strong Ling Han's willpower was, how many times could he use it? If Ling Han did not change his battle strategy, then he would only be continuously wounded by Ao Xinglai, and in the end, he would completely lose his battle prowess. But what everyone did not know was that Ling Han possessed the indestructible Heaven Scroll. Ordinary injuries could be healed in an instant, and he also had 3 drops of indestructible true fluid, which could allow him to recover from serious injuries 3 times. What kind of concept was that? He was practically an unkillable monster. Moreover, he possessed a sliver of the divine sense of the heaven tier. So dispelling the martial intent contained within a level 5 spirit tool was nothing to him. If others were to be struck by the Black Star Sword, even if it was only sword chi, they would bleed endlessly, and even their spirit would be destroyed. Otherwise, how could a spirit tool be so terrifying? As far as Ling Han was concerned, the Black Star Sword was only slightly sharper. And it was extremely sharp, and even his body of rock cliff could not withstand it. Pung 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 pung. The 2 of them continued to exchange injury for injury. Ling Han was covered in wounds, and his face had become pale due to the great loss of blood. Ao Xinglai was not much better off either. His face was already no different from a pig's head. It could be said that even if Ao Xinglai could win this battle, there was nothing to be proud of. Not only did he have to rely on the might of his spirit tool, his face had also been beaten into a pig's head, and he had completely lost face. Most importantly, Ao Xinglai might not be able to win. Ling Han continued to swallow alchemical pills, and the injuries on his body were actually brought under control. By the looks of it, he could still hold on for a very, very long time. Ling Han was of course only putting on an act when he swallowed pills. He did not want others to know that he possessed a powerful recovery ability. In any case, he had already said that he had an alchemist master who could even gift bottles of Restore Origin pills to others, so it was not strange that he would have a lot of healing pills on him. This kind of scene caused the elite of spiritual pedestal tier to look hesitant. He did not know whether he should stop the battle or not. If this continued, the 2 of them could possibly be crippled. If such a thing really happened, he would not be able to excuse himself. However, just as he was hesitating, Ling Han and Ao Xinglai fiercely exchanged over a dozen blows. Ao Xinglai spat out a mouthful of blood, and his figure staggered. Though his cultivation level was in the 9th layer of the spiritual ocean tier, he did not have a divine healing art like the indestructible Heaven Scroll, so how could he endure Ling Han's continuous barrage of punches? He was now completely relying on his willpower to hold on. He could not lose, he definitely could not lose. He was the leader of the 7 sons of Ao family, and he had inherited the Black Star Sword. He could only be glorious for a lifetime. However, why was his vision becoming more and more blurry? Ao Xinglai's entire face was covered in blood, blurring his vision, and his willpower was similarly becoming blurry. Anyone who had been punched in the head several dozen times by a martial artist of the same cultivation level would definitely feel dizzy and see stars. Everyone understood his condition very well. Even though Ao Xinglai had also taken some alchemical pills, the effects of the pills needed time to take effect. Moreover, medicine was only medicine and not a divine pill. This caused everyone to be extremely confused. That was because Ling Han's injuries were obviously more severe. Yet he was still able to jump around in such a lively manner. Though he was also bathed in blood, His condition was who knew how many times better than Ao Xinglai's. Could it be that this brat had really taken a divine pill? I won't lose, I won't lose. Ao Xinglai staggered, but a willpower supported him. He definitely could not faint. He was Ao Xinglai, and in a battle of the same cultivation level he definitely could not lose. This kind of fighting spirit caused everyone to involuntarily feel admiration. Whether or not Ao Xinglai was well liked was one thing, but this kind of tenacious willpower was worthy of praise. Even Ling Han nodded internally. However, their standpoints were different, and it also involved the thunder battle armor, so he naturally could not possibly stop. With this fighting spirit of yours, Ling Han delivered another punch. Ao Xinglai found it difficult to even stand, so how could he possibly dodge or parry this punch? Instantly, a punch landed on his chest. I grant you a dignified defeat. Peng Ao Xinglai fell heavily onto the ground, and could no longer get up. No matter how strong one's willpower was, there would still be a limit. The 9 rounds of battle ended, and Ling Han had 9 wins and 0 losses, fully deserving of the first place. Very good. Now you all can go back and rest. Tomorrow the rewards will be distributed, that spiritual pedestal tier elite said. He too breathed a sigh of relief. Though Ao Xinglai had been beaten very badly, he had not suffered any serious injuries that could not be healed. Haha, junior brother Han, come to my place to play. Yu Kaiyu immediately walked over and extended an invitation to Ling Han. Putting aside the fact that Ling Han had given him 3 bottles of Restore Origin pills, the fact that Ling Han had defeated all the 7 sons of Ao family was enough to make Yu Kaiyu consider him a close friend. Ling Han said, "Wait for me to clean up, then we'll go to senior brother Yu's place." Of course. Yu Kaiyu nodded hurriedly. Ling Han was currently covered in blood, and would look extremely pathetic when he went up. Naturally, he had to take a good bath first, and then change into a set of clean clothes. Ling Han returned to his residence on Rising Sword Peak, and directly entered into the Black Tower to clean himself up. Then, he gnawed on 100-year-old ginseng to nourish his body, and only then did he go to find Yu Kaiyu. He too very much wanted to find out news about his mother through the latter's mouth.